All right, welcome back to the show. Today's guest, Mads Jonsson from Norway, one of the goats at going big. Homie was an absolute psycho, a controlled psycho at riding park jumps, hips, backcountry, all aspects, lines, step downs. Great trick selection. Filmed with standard for almost a decade. And yeah, I don't know, broke the world record for the biggest air on a jump and a hip. Iconic photos from Blotto, Jeff Curtis. Mads is a complete legend, and he's kind of been away, you know? He's living north in Norway, chilling on a surf ranch, working, farming, fishing, being a dad, and it was good to catch up with him. Great episode. Hope you enjoy it.
Don't worry, like and subscribe, Airtime Podcast, turn that bell on.
Cody,
Don't miss an episode.
this is the battery that you grabbed this morning? Personalized air vehicle for one man is coming, and it's getting close.
How close do you think we are until we have personalized drones?
Before we have it, if I don't know, it's pretty slow. Like first technology has to happen, then it has to get approved. So I don't think we're going to enjoy it in our young lifetime. But maybe when we get older, we can see that the kids are flying out to their spots with their drones and just getting dropped off and doing their thing. Heli skiing's out. Everything is out because everybody's got their own heli.
I think that it's going to happen sooner than we think, because when I go down the YouTube rabbit hole and I see some of these robots jumping off of like these, one-story buildings and doing somersaults off of it and landing absolutely perfect with like a cup of water in their hand and not spilling any of the liquid. I'm like,
Yeah, I saw that too.
I'm like, as if this is real, and as if Terminator and G.I. Joe and all that shit is just turning into reality.
Yeah, but it is. It's just I think those movies are just the symbolic of our mind and where it can go. We made the picture look like it will happen, and then sure shit, we have the brains to make it happen in real life as well.
I like that. It's almost like if you can think of a triple cork or like a double backside rodeo or triple backside rodeo, if you can envision it, eventually those things manifest and become reality. It's like almost like human civilization manifested where we're going today.
Yeah, but that's a great example. I believe Gigi said that once in an interview way back. Can't remember if it was Trans World or Pleasure, but he was right. Like when you're going off the jump, you have 90% to 99% more chance of sticking that trick if you can feel the visual part before you take off. If you know where it's going, you can feel the whole act, what you're going to do, and you have no doubts, then that is definitely what's going to happen. So it's yeah, snowboarding has snowboarding is part of evolution, so of course it has many signs of evolution in it.
I like that, and I agree.
Yeah.
And maybe on that note, I will do an introduction. Mads Jonsson, welcome to the show. I am a huge fan. I'm glad you said yes to doing this interview. On the drive here today, I was trying to think, when was the first time that you really like stuck into my mind? And yeah, it was, for me, it was White Balance, because that was like one of the first DVDs I really binged. But I'll never forget the photo.
Such a good soundtrack on that.
Oh,
album.
dude.
Dude.
Your part in that, what's that song? Hard to Find by the American Analog Set or whatever. That song went so well with your part. But thank you for coming on the show. How the hell you doing, man?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me. I've been watching you now for the time you've been playing on your podcast, and it's great to finally hook up again and get to chat. And now I'm sitting here in farmland, not so much snowboarding and filming anymore, but I'm doing great.
Good to hear, man. I couldn't be
Yeah.
happier to hear that you're doing well. And so what's a day in a life like for Mads these days?
Well, yesterday was a particularly good day because I was taking my little one to ski school or snowboard school with personal trainer Papa. And that was a great day. But for the most part, I work the farm and I get up in the morning and I feed the animals. Now in the winter, between say November and spring with like May, like beginning of May or late May, depending on the year, then we have to feed them every day. So that's like part of the routine. And then, yeah, just today I was butchering. So stripping down a half ox and making products out of that.
Damn. So how much of that ox goes to waste? How much do you use?
The waste pile would be maybe about 5% of the total weight.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's that has to be, then you're using the bones. So then after the bones have gone through the broth, then you can weigh them again, which I never do because I don't really, like there's nothing really to do with the bones. I could ship them to jewelry places in Asia, but there's so many other things to focus about. But that's what I do. I cut out the bones, which is about 40% of any carcass, whether it's a little sheep or a big ox that's 400 kilos. So it's with those 40%, you can, you know, cook this really healthy juice that you can use for really good sauces for food, whatever. Or I try and, like, whatever soup that we make, not use those powdered ultra processed kind of broth that you get in the store, but just having these broth bottles. I use all my soda bottles and fill them with broth and put them in the freezer.
And bone broth. I don't know much about much when it comes to health, and I'm not going to act like I do. But one thing I've heard a lot is that bone broth is super good for you. Do you agree? And if you care to share maybe why it's good for you, do you know? I'm not a scientist about it, but I can feel it. I can vouch for it because I live in bone broth heaven. And I use it a lot, and especially when you do eat, like say if you're feeling a little down, and then you split a bone in half, because I got this amazing meat saw, right, that comes with the slaughtery kind of business, and it can split these, like the bones are like this thick on an ox, and you split them halfway, and then you cook them in the stove, and you eat them with homemade sourdough bread, and you just feel this amazing amount of energy boosting into your body. But I think it's, yeah, what's that? I was gonna say, so you don't need like there's a more organic way than Red Bull Monster.
Definitely. One could really call this the energy, like broth is the energy drink of the olden times, like no freaking doubt.
That is amazing. How long have you been into this like lifestyle, like farming, fishing, hunting? Did you grow up? Is this childhood? Yeah.
Always been into food, and especially cooking on fire, like outdoors, you know, like I was an outdoors kid. I was hunting already, but during my snowboard years, I got to hunt maybe, you know, a couple of days out of the year. Now I get to hunt steadily from September to Christmas. And it's like a whole different thing. And I get to practice hunting, which is a, you know, whole different painting to make, and lots of skills involved, and very similar to snowboarding. And you can take a lot of cool things out of snowboarding, like reading terrain and being able to orientate yourself in these forests or hills where we go. I usually, for the most part, I hunt the Norwegian red deer, right? Which is lives out here on the cliffs, and it's like a goat kind of deer. And it's really, you know, like living with this has always been part of my life. But I feel like when I moved here to the farm, where I get to surf really good waves, they're not like Maldivian or Indonesian waves, but they're freaking good sometimes. And then we have really good mountains. Like yesterday, I got one daddy run when I was out with my kid, and there was just full face shots and pow turns. And the good part is there's nobody in the ski resort. There's me and like 28 kids, whatever, and the whole mountain's just covered. And this little nutcracker just going up forever. The kids need to jump off halfway, and then the papa track keeps going, you know what I mean? And then just like, you're like, okay, so you're not used to that situation, right? But now I'm starting to get used to that, to have the ski resort by yourself, and it's worth the whole thing, you know what I mean? I maybe get 10-15 days a year, but they're always on my own or with a couple of friends. And yeah, it's don't get me wrong, the farm life does not fulfill my snowboarding fantasy like my old life did, but it sure as shit has all the elements where I feel that same quality. And that's why I moved here, because it really has that same quality of riding, and it's within an hour from driving it home.
I think you landed in a pretty magical place. I mean, I follow you. I see, like, you know, even Mikkel going back, and he's like, you could share, like, he's showcasing, you know, his roots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Norway is a beautiful place. And when you combine like your love for hunting, fishing, surfing, and then, you know, the absolute haymaker here, snowboarding, and you can combine all of that into a lifestyle and then share that with your daughter, it's, you know, sounds like you're living awesome. Good, dog. It seems like you figured it out.
And for 2 years, I even lived the freaking North American dream, dude. I had a cat, and I had 2 cats that we had the permission to drive, and I had a Polaris from, I think that was a year 17 model. That was the 64 track 800 Summit, like a good sled, you know. I was living the North American dream, and I was like pretty much the only kid in Norway that could do that shit. We fucking did so much, like it was so fun. But now the government is all pissed off about the cat skiing again, and this particular municipal county pulled out of this thing that we got going with main government to try and make cat skiing legal in Norway, which is like, I'm on year 14 from my first meeting with a politician.
I mean, why not? Even just like Norway is one of the happiest places in the world. Why not make it even happier with letting people go cat skiing in one of the most beautiful places in the world? And you can do that with like a sustainable like approach. It doesn't have to be like butchering, you know, the whole community and, you know, putting massive hotel chains and shitty McDonald's.
It has nothing to do
stuff.
with that.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't need to do it at like the way that like the Vail approach of North America.
It's the perfect match for Norway, because we got just registered ski resorts that are small, driven like this one here, family driven by local heroes that are like, everybody from the mechanic to the freaking guy running the lift are farmers that know about machinery, and they make the ski resort happen. And we have 375 ski resorts that are registered, maybe 5 of them making money and are big, like Hemsedal and Trysil and those places. And all these other places are just, most of them, and especially up and down the coastline, are placed into these magnificent freaking Alaska looking mountains with fjords. You're just like, hey, politician guys, come on, you know. But it's stranded here in this municipal county, in my case, because they actually took it serious and checked into the jurisdiction, kind of like who bears the responsibility, not over the driving itself, because that's all anchored in cross-country ski slopes, and making the slopes is okay. But what happens to the person and the guiding? We have no rules around this. Mechanical guiding does not exist in Norway, which is really fucking weird, to be quite honest.
I like that these smaller resorts, and by the hundred, seem to be these like passion projects that the whole community get behind, and, you know, everybody knows everybody, and they play like an integral role in the success of that local resort. Yeah. That's no wonder it's one of the happiest places in the world, because that builds such a strong community.
Yeah, you would love, dude. You need to come here one day. You're gonna be mind blown if you see it. Like I saw it yesterday, you're just like, what? This is really snowboarding heaven. Like, what the fuck? There's nobody here. And the terrain here, man, on the coast, especially right here, it is the most skatey, fluid, like never ever scary terrain. It's like 35, 40 degrees at the most, but it's just so fluid. Like, and it's like the mix. If you took Canada, like not Alaska, because it's not that big. If you go into our biggest mountains or the Lyngen Alps in northern Norway, you can start resemble Alaska. And also like just northeast of where I'm located, there are some big mountains there too, but they're very few. But the rest are like, if you mixed Japan and you got the girth of like British Columbia, you know what I mean?
Damn.
British Columbian mountains with Japanese trees. And it's just like, yeah, really, really cool terrain.
And it seems to me like that terrain is kind of untapped, not like there's not a lot of people like filming there all the time. So there's probably just these amazing, amazing features that nobody's ever filmed on. And I feel
zero people filming. Like here in my region, in that place, you could film a whole movie around that little ski resort because it's such a big area, and it's a very special mountain range because it's placed next to the most western northern glacier in Europe, and it's so it's not the most northern, but it's the most northern that far west in all of the landmass in Europe, and it has like this crazy fjord, Nordfjord, where I live in the middle, and it's this little ridge that creates, let's just call it a very alpine mountain range compared to the big mountains that are like, if you go straight east from here with a helicopter for about 45 minutes, you get into the big mountains. So that would be like, you know, flying through the whole tenure of Haynes heli skiing. And on the other side, you would find the big mountains. So it's a pretty far distance, but like this mountain range out here, it collects snow on very many directions. So it goes from south to north, which is great. And it really holds some of the most spectacular riding in the southern part of Norway, I think, where not necessarily always the depth of the snow, but you can get the champagne pow and all that. But the views that you're watching, because you can see the great ocean in the far, and you see the fjords, and sometimes you can stand in one place and see two fjords and one ocean, and you're like, what's going on here? It's just like radness.
And how remote is this? Is this like I'm gonna have to go there and pitch a tent to get out there, or is there like small little hotels and hostels and motels that you could kind of stay at the bottom of these kind of mountains that you're talking about?
And that's the coolest part about Norway, that is totally untapped as a resource. It's like traveling, like where I'm sitting right now is the latitude of Anchorage, right?
What?
62. Yeah, 62. Damn. And we can drive to the West Cape with a car. You can drive up there with your rental car. You can rent the smallest little shit car you can find. You drive straight up to the West Cape. There are tunnels, bridges, and ferries everywhere. Because we have, you know, it's one of the things that does make Norway into this great place is that, imagine if you can do that on Vancouver Island. You could drive all the way up to Nootka Sound everywhere. There was freaking turns and nooks and little towns everywhere, or you could go drive from there along the coast up to Anchorage. You can't. It's like fucking billy goating, bushwhacking, fucking see you later with a Cub 22, you know what I mean? And it really got good after hydro back before the war. We got into hydro with Americans and Germans and started making good roads. But then the Second World War really expanded Norway crazy in the infrastructure, and especially this place, like this was strategically one of the more important places during the Second World War. And you know, the network of roads that are around there would have never been built on the normal progress of Norway if it wasn't for that happening.
Oh, so, I believe that.
And then after that, we find the oil, right? So we already started with hydro and starting to build infrastructure. Then Adolf went apeshit like other people are doing today. And he went crazy on the country all the way up to Northern Norway because there was metal and strategic points, and he was just like having a ball with making this little fortress out of Norway. And then we just like, it's really amazing to see, like, if there was a town here that had a road that was too dangerous to drive to, but it was a public town as part of the public network, and they paid, what was it, 160 million kroners. So divide that by, so $16 million US. No,
No, I think more than that.
yeah, 160 million dollars US. Sorry.
Yeah, that seems more right. Because I mean, the road from
Yeah,
Vancouver to Whistler
but-
that they redid was $1 billion.
No, but this wasn't a long tunnel. It was 2 kilometers long.
Oh,
The
fuck.
point is that there was 20 people that lived there full time. And that's the cool, but this is why Norway works so well. We have that extreme socialistic, but very capitalistic society. We have the money because we have that great oil fund that is just like creating all these scenarios where I won't say that we're very efficient at spending money, because we're like a child with too much money, but we do a lot of great projects, and they become 3 times more expensive than they need to, but they happen.
Okay, so I'm going to steer this conversation back to something that we were touching on yesterday.
Yeah.
I like how you worded this, and well, I will quickly go back. It sounds like that I should do a trip to Norway. I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of people that are jotting that down right now, and I think that you might be the tour guide, whether you like it or not. I think you're gonna be getting some messages.
Dude, that's what I do. I love showing people around here, so hit me up.
Okay. Yeah, but yesterday you did say, you quote said, "It's a cool time to talk about snowboarding." And yes. I liked that, and I kind of liked what you had to elaborate and what we were shooting the shit on. Maybe kind of elaborate on why it's a cool time to talk about snowboarding.
Because I think snowboarding right now is at this crazy standoff where it's about to explode, and people are going to remind themselves what snowboarding really is all about. And why I'm saying is that we have like, when I'm not into like watching either, like I'm more surfing now, like surfing obtains my mind like snowboarding used to do, but I still don't watch WSL, but I find the very much joy, like we were talking about yesterday, using my Instagram, and my Instagram tells me what's going on, and I very much appreciate that, because then I get to lay down in the evening when I'm going to bed, or if I'm taking a shit during the day, I get to update myself and I see what's going on, and what the kids are doing on a snowboard is just fucking phenomenal. Like, cool boarders, you couldn't even do the shit that kids are doing now live during X Games on cool boarders when I was like 20 years ago, or especially when Nintendo 64 came out with their game called 1080. You know what I mean? Like, and for me, like, sitting here a little bit on the sideline, still really feeling like I'm part of the snowboard, like I understand what's going on there. I've been there, and it's cool to watch it from the sideline, is what I'm trying to say. But it's also cool to see how this is not really the topic. The topic is now more, and it's very good that this is the topic, and it shows the spine of snowboarding, truly the spine of snowboarding. We're like a little kid that have got some really rich step parents called the corporate world. And these step parents, they make our life really good so that we can keep rocking on, which is awesome. Hail to the step parents. But the step parents are weird, and they don't understand their step kids, right? So we're at the stand-ups right now, and I see, the X Games thing now with the TikTok guys. like when Todd had such a good thing, and like we also spoke about yesterday, for Todd to come on to point the finger, he has cleaned his nails pretty well before he does that, and he's really good at that. And he said it really right. Like, have you gone to some agency and just they told you what the kids maybe are gonna like? Or are we snowboarders that tell the story about the rider? make it exciting, tell their story, talk about snowboarding in those brief moments between the action. And we need to take it back to that. Like when I feel down and I feel like snowboarding is going the wrong way, or surfing or skating, or for that matter, like it's not. It's born from Dogtown Sea Boys and Steve Rocco. If you just go back and watch all that stuff, you see that that's where it's gonna always be. And it's not gonna ever totally sell out, even though that is the theme right now. And that's why it's so cool. And because it's, again, also, I forgot to mention, look at what happens in the big mountain with Travis's natural selection. It's so exciting to watch. But if I would point anything to anything that's going on, is that this whole corporate world has taken even words out of what people can use as their vocabulary that's part of our culture. And I feel that it's a very sign of robbery of our true identity. And the day it explodes, I think everybody's going to just be like, holy shit, what happened? Oh, it's not, oh, what the fuck? People do triple corks now? The girls are doing quadruple corks? Holy shit. And then people are just going to gather. And I really believe, that's why I brought up Travis. I believe in that concept, that it's always going to sum up who is the best. So it doesn't turn into, because if you need the skill to win X Games and natural selection, holy shit, that's asking a lot of one person.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I feel that it's really exciting. It's such a shit show of strong points. We need the corporate world. And again, they're good step parents. They have brought, like, the corporate world has really brought the world of snowboarding to a place. Like for me, I wouldn't have sat here if it wasn't for corporate interest. I would have been, flunked back to having an 8 to 9 job or 8 to 4 job in Oslo, and that's it. But since there was corporate interest in my time of being a snowboard professional, I can sit here and live my dream. I was also a little bit smart and invested some money, but damn, did I fucking have a good time, And if you look at Marcus Klevland and Mark McMorris and the boys, if they didn't have all this corporate money, they would never fucking be that good at snowboarding. So the explosion's about to happen. That's why it's exciting to talk about snowboarding.
It's definitely exploding. And I feel like the contest side is almost so far gone into that field where you need the coach, you need the crazy training, you have to learn so much about air awareness and trampoline training, that it's kind of turned into a different sport completely, where I feel like
it was always where we dreamed it was going to go. Like if you were like fingerboarding, like you were throwing that ball around, there's just doing all these hucks. And I must say, like, fucking hands off. I don't care how many trainers they need, but they do it with style too. God damn it.
Oh, the Su Young Mings or whatever, his 19 was insane. Like his poke and stuff like that it would be pretty hard to say that had bad style for what it was. I mean, there's definitely some people that would do the argument where it's like anything after a 360 is repeating yourself. But I'm not trying to say with my little quote that when I intervene there that I don't like what's going on. It's just so far-fetched now that it's fucking crazy. It's like like you said there with the cool borders analogy, it's like we're doing tricks now that you couldn't do in SS Tricky and 1080 and cool borders.
Yeah.
You couldn't even get those you couldn't even fathom doing those tricks then. And now it's like exceeded that with another 720. It is, dude,
I still remember
wild.
watching I still remember watching Heike do the first switch backside 10 flat spin. And people were just like, what in the fuck happened? Like we were blown away. And that's not so long ago. That's like 15 years ago.
Yeah, that was really sick on that park jump with Stalefish, I think. Yeah, that was
exactly.
Yeah, that was
And that was our little practice booter for the mega jumps in Hemsedal that we were like warming up with. And there was a contest the first weekend we were there. And then we would just like jump that to get some stock photos, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
all of a sudden, Heike just pulled it out of the hat. He felt it coming, you know?
I hope that there's a bit of I just don't want to wake up one day and go on to these like mountains and go to these small remote locations and the core community, however and I'm not trying to say that like the people that are too cool. I'm just saying when I say core snowboarding, I'm just saying people who really love snowboarding, all the aspects of it, nerd out on it, like to watch it.
Yeah.
And not just somebody who buys a snowboard to go to a bachelor party and get drunk for the weekend. But those are the main people that are snowboarding now. But without the core, it's like, I don't want to go on the resort one day and look around and it's just all these like kooks and nobody who really like lives, eats and breathes snowboarding. And the more that the TikTok world pushes in, I think that lots of people with good taste will get a bad taste in their mouth. And maybe those young, the next, I don't know, Andrew Reynolds and the next Nicholas Mueller and the next, I don't know, Devin Walsh and Mark Frank and whoever might just maybe not go in that direction, where I think a lot of the most tasteful, most progressive snowboarders, the reason why they got involved in the first place, as well as skateboarders and surfing, is because of how cool the culture was. And I think that with the X Games, them kind of moving into that TikTok world, I mean, it was obvious when Todd posted it as well as when that shit went absolutely viral and you're getting like, Todd had, I think, 3,000 comments of the vast majority of them being like, holy shit, like it's always been a little off. I mean, like, let's face it, it's X Games. It's not the corporate world needs to, the reason why they're behind it is to, get a return on their investment. But I think Todd's stance is there's a much more tasteful approach to this. Just like you were saying, like the intermissions there, I would love to see a background on Mark McMorris getting over that injury of hitting a tree and seeing what he's had to, push through to get to where he's at. Then be like, all right, now we're with Stony Blaze. And you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Like, what are they doing there? You know what I mean? And, but it's again, we see it, like if you take a look outside of snowboarding, which is something that I've had the privilege to do for 10 years now. And that's to totally sit outside of snowboarding, then the world is kind of kooky. You know what I mean? Like the world is kind of kooky. It's like corporate. The world is like our Western world. If you go into the jungle in the Amazon, it's not corporate at all. But even up here, people live in that corporate bubble. And I'm really glad that I got to be a part of the pack. I call myself a snowboarder. I still breathe snowboarding. Every time I ride, it feels just as good. And I honor those good things, like I said, about Steve Rocco, about World Industries, and about Standard Films, and about rock and roll. It was about youth against establishment. No, wasn't that Volcom's big slogan all the time?
Oh, I mean, that was snowboarding's. There was. You take the Burton Sims thing from day one. There's definitely one was a more corporate element. One was a more core, like, fuck you, surfing, partying, like we're rebellious people that's anti-establishment. I mean, listen to all the music that got used from like 1985 until like today. It's like, fuck the corporate world. But now it seems like we're kind of getting fucked by the corporate world. And what I mean by that is the 1%, the people that own these corporate companies, are making more money than ever. And I don't think that they're allocating a big enough budget to even snowboard films. Like your idea at the beginning, like, man, like Norway has some amazing terrain and like it would be sick for 10 snowboarders to go there. But do you know who can afford that? Only the snowboarders who are riding the corporate coattails, not the other really core snowboarders who may have just as much talent, but don't identify with that core world, or they don't like to be on social media as much. Because you need to be a social media, I mean, excuse my language, but like a social media whore to like, especially if you're trying to break on the scene, you have to toot your own horn and wave your own flag. where it
Yeah.
used to be a little bit more where it was like the team and the team manager's responsibility to market you rather
Yeah.
than you market yourself. But now it's kind of done the opposite, where it's like that's cringe for a lot of people. They don't want to be like, I'm the best, look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
And it's
But I was there. I was there, dude, in the transition, and that was one of my greatest arguments with Burton at the time. And not directly the reason why I was let go from Burton, but one of the contributing discussions that made me into a difficult person to work with. So I was just like, fuck this. I don't care about my Facebook. I don't want a homepage. I'm not like, I just want to go snowboard. You know what I mean? And I still feel like that. Now I run my own business, and I'm so bad at like keeping my Instagram going. So, but I have a plan, okay, and it's gonna happen in the future. And I understand how important it is. If you are running your own business, I do think that you just have to understand that it's actually a gift that you can. Like 20, 30 years ago, it would cost you an arm and a leg to get anybody's attention. So for small businesses, I like it, but I know that the proprietorship is set up with the contract so that you're a sole proprietor when you're a snowboard athlete, but you are hired by the company. And I think that's one of the sad things that I see, that like there's other very monumental events that have happened in snowboarding over the last couple of years that shows that this family team spirit is what we call dwindled down to about nothing. You know what I mean? Like there is no team spirit. If you're hot, you're hot. You're part of the team. Then everybody's happy and you're a family. If you're not hot, there's no kindlewood. There is no handout. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can be the biggest star that won all the championships fucking 15 years running, and you've been the biggest star since the birth of the sport. Not to mention any names, but you still get kicked off the team like you're garbage. You know what I mean? And that's really sad to see. And that's where I think this whole thing now I think the bubble's about to burst, like I said. I think kids are just like the snowboard. I still hope that snowboarding is strong enough and the culture is deep enough and the roots are long enough for us to stand together and just, we don't need to ridicule it because it's just like so against what they're trying to sell. If you're trying to make money, don't sell the replica, sell the right shit.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there's going to be a lot of snowboard brands that are going to be in for a rude awakening when they go too much in trying to people please and be a yes man at their job position and always need, because to me, I look at like the older generation now, and a lot of those people are the team managers, the marketing managers, etc. So they get it, but they also want to keep their job, and they also might be looking for an exit at the end of their job. So they're trying to double their numbers and show their boss that they increased the company by 50% this year, just like their boss is doing. And they all kind of seem, well, not all, but a lot of them seem like it's an exit strategy to a different job with more money. Where if, as soon as you get somebody that's just like, I'm fucking about snowboarding. We didn't have a great year this year, but we could have a great year this next year or whatever. I think the brands that keep it snowboarding through and through, and I'm not talking, I want to make myself clear again, that's not just the core. Like I'm talking like if you're riding pipe contests, backcountry streets, however you're doing it, I'm about it. But like there just needs to be more of an allocation to core snowboarding and less of an allocation to corporate interest. And that the pushback needs to be from the higher ups, but I just feel like those people would rather say yes to their bosses than have the difficult conversations that they need to have. And I think that in the nearish future, you're going to see some of the smaller brands that kept it real prevail, and the other companies that were always worried about, you know, we need to get to X dollars. I think a lot of them are going to fold because the cool core kids, they dictate the future of everything. The kids do. And so I think a lot of the kids, and if you go to a lot of the resorts, there's always that handful of cool kids. Then you got the local kid who looks like Jamie Lynn. You got the local kid that looks like Keegan Valeka. You got the local kid that looks like X or whatever. Tommy
Yeah.
Gesme, the list goes on. And those
Yeah.
people move the needle more than I think any social media numbers can say to a brand. But the brand always
Yeah.
wants the numbers now. They want to be like, that guy that on our team has 100,000 followers. Well, the guy with 22,000 followers might have a drastically more, a bigger impact on his following than this person with 100,000 followers who's just good
Yeah.
at figuring out the algorithm of the day.
Yeah, and he's paid a bunch of money to increase his freaking Instagram account. It's just like homie with 20,000. He's just been there sporting. You know, he's been a part of some sponsorship here, and then you got some like you're pointing to exactly what I think is really, really sad to see. But I don't think snowboarding is the only industry that's suffering from it. I see that corporate is unanimous with people full of money and no knowledge. The only thing they have knowledge about is to make more money with their money. And their whole security, like you're touching into, is numbers. You can't run culture by numbers. You just can't. But it doesn't happen. Because and that's why I think snowboarding, like we're both agree on, it's gonna prevail. We're stronger in culture than they are in numbers. And if they start selling something else than snowboarding, it's gonna again dwindle down to a kick scooter or something at Walmart, and it's not gonna be then all. And again, I'm just saying the utopia of all snowboarding, boarding, sideways standing, culturally right people will never throw their board. You know what I mean? We will forge our own boards out of freaking branches if we need to. Look at Volley. You know what I mean? Volley is a great example of who he's gonna. He can like maybe be in the future one of the guys that actually created some sort of mystical approach to how to take it from just pressing your own like power rider boards to maybe owning a big brand. He's got the, you know, like I know he's so knowledgeable, Volle, when you talk to him about making boards, because he's been so in with Salomon and doing his own thing. And I really believe that, you know, him or Yes, the guys from Yes, JP, DCP, and Roman, they're still going strong. And yeah, we're in an interesting time. The culture is too strong. It's like, will you see the Eiffel Tower getting blown down? No, like it won't happen. It's like the culture is, the fundament is so strong. I don't think the corporate can break it, even how much they try.
Yeah, I think that was one of the best things I've ever heard on the podcast. You can't run culture by numbers. Fucking fire. That was so well articulated, and I hope that that's the biggest takeaway from this podcast, because that's the ticket right there. I mean, we all want a little bit of support from somebody so we can do what we love to do.
It's okay to make money. So again, in the defense of the guy sitting there as a team manager, defending his position, creating a platform for his life, hats off to you. Do that. But like you said, on your way, have some pride. Take that difficult discussion with your boss and tell him like, hey, buddy, you know numbers. I know culture of snowboarding. If we just do this right, you will not only build yourself a stronger platform, you'll make more numbers for a longer time, you know. And they just, I like that you brought that up. Just have the balls, you guys. I'm not in the seat. I deliberately made a choice to do my own thing and not to work with snowboarding, because I had such a good time with snowboarding, and I didn't want that to ever go away. So, but hats off to the guys that do work with it and take those positions. We need more people from, like, the most people we can get from inside, but take that fucking discussion. Be a man or a woman and do that.
Fucking beautiful. This is amazing. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now, because I think that you just summed up that discussion perfectly.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. That was fucking beautiful.
Thank you.
Can maybe touch on your local scene growing up. I want to hear about like some of the up and comers, like what kind of the park kind of felt like back in the day. What was in your head as like a youth, and maybe just touch on that local scene that was in a young Mads Jonsson's mind.
Well, at very young age, obviously Daniel and Terje were always on the mind. Like, we had two guys from this country that were part of this cool culture, and they were not just part of it, which would have been cool enough, but they were the best. You know what I mean? And they didn't want media, and they were against establishment. It was like, I was one of them kids that really sucked into that youth against establishment shit. You know, like, it was really that cool sport where it wasn't organized. You just, everybody just met at the fucking hill and you just did your thing. And we dug a couple of kickers, and so that was early on, like, probably like, 10, 12, when we started forming a little group in Oslo. And then from there, the movies became very important, the release of every movie, and especially standard films. And then MacDog coming along, and then, the battle of the soundtracks, because the music would also be then the theme of the party after, you know what I mean? So it really formed standard films, and that whole culture of filming action sport just really formed my life with the snowboard crew. But I grew up in a soccer cross-country ski place where a lot of my friends still today are not snowboarders from that time, but I met progressively more and more of some of my best friends during life because of this culture, which I'm forever grateful for, so that, as a young kid, that was going through my mind until sports school. Sports school was like kind of like the milestone for the decision made in my mind that this is something that I want to do. So then from there on, everything in my mind was go fucking bigger than everybody else.
Oh yeah, we remember.
And then that's what I just really wanted to just go. I didn't want to be Evel Knievel, but I wanted to just like control the speed and just be that speed guy. I looked up to Johan, like, and he said in the movie, "Speed's your friend." And I'm like, okay, Johan, I get it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely, and everybody who's listening to this, and maybe the younger generation doesn't know, but I mean, going big was, it was your cup of tea. But I will say it wasn't like big and out of control. It seemed like slower, but more pop. You rode a lot of hips, a lot of jumps. But when I think of you, I think of somebody with really controlled pop. Like, you're not like tucking and then flailing all the way into your, like, your alley-oop on the hip or your method on the hip. It was like, it looked like the whole time you had the right speed, and then you were comfortable on the takeoff, and then you would go so much higher than everybody else who had a hip shot on that same feature.
Yeah, but it was something that we practiced a lot, like in sports school. Me and JP and all the kids, we were like, it was all about the pop. There was no, I guess today there's a bunch of methods how to train a kid in snowboarding, but back then we were the first kind of year of sport kids. So the trainer, he was just there to organize so that we could ride. He didn't know how to snowboard, you know what I mean? So we would just figure out and it was a really cool time. And pop was like, to be able to like, and also on the skateboard, like to set the decks up and have the good ollie to like do 4 decks, and you're like, fuck, I'm the man.
Yeah.
So pop, and it has come back. Like, I really feel that, and I can see it in Mikkel too, it helps to be a tall Norwegian rider. You deal with speed. When you have a long board, he's riding a 172. So when you have a long board and long body and all the confidence you can feel in that body, you can ride really fast. Like, look at how he goes. Like, look at his winning run from last year, or like his good run there with his front 3 in natural selection. I think very few people understand how hardcore that fucking line is, because he makes it look so easy. But he rode it so fast. Like, most people in that whole contest, Travis included, we're doing more turns down that face. You fucking cleared the whole face in like 3 turns. and he made it look like it was going like.
Let's touch on that. Mikkel, because
Mikkel.
I called Mikkel yesterday. He was riding with Ben Ferg on the hill. He said he'd call me after riding, and I'm glad he did, because he gave me some insight to you, your riding, and how much he looked up to you as a mentor in his early ages, and just how much of a savage you were, and just how hard it would be to film 10 years of video parts in the era that you filmed video parts. Like, insane. So maybe just touch on seeing like this kid who you probably used to give noogies to and like, you know, punch him in the shoulder, go to being what I would say you can't argue one of the best snowboarders of all time, and one of the best backcountry snowboarders, who has among the best taste, best style, his flow, his turns. It's like, it's only getting more special for Mikkel, I feel like. Which is wild.
He's definitely one of them snowboarders that age like a good wine, you know, like it just gets better and better. And he always has, and I think that's because of his extreme positive outlook on things. He's just, you know how he is, just like, oh, that's awesome, you know. And he just, I think he's fortunate to have his skill set and his mindset together. And it really, from like you were touching on there, I mean, I didn't just punch him in the shoulder. One time I ended up punching him right in the face because I missed the shoulder and he started crying. And I just remember those good old days when he was just such a little shit, and he was the smallest one because he had Freddie with him, and Freddie was like 2-3 years older, so he was like 14 or 15, whatever he was. But Mikkel was freaking 11. He was just like, he's like so close to where my daughter is now in his head when I met him, you know, like and we were supposed to be these punk rock tough guys at 18, 19, you know, just got licensed, huh? Yeah, we can buy beer and shit at the store, you little kid, you know. But he was just so fun to have around. But during the first years, to be quite honest, we felt more kind of like they were annoying. They were super cool and funny, but we didn't, you know. As I see Mikkel today, he's one of my best friends through my whole entire life, and we're completely, you know, side by side, which is really cool. He's 8 years younger than me, but slowly but surely we've kind of grown into the same age, and he's in so ways kind of grown past me, and he got older because he's had this amazing long career, which is very impressive to see how he keeps it going and renews himself. So I mean, my time with him has just been, it's been my life, really, my friendship with Mikkel.
I feel like a big part to Mikkel's success is from a young age, he was surrounded by the best snowboarders in the world. And that just goes to show how important, if it is important to you, to push your riding, to ride with people that are better than you, makes you like, he's watching like you, JP Solberg, like those Hemsedal sessions, and being a young kid and getting to go to those. Cause I mean, I mentioned earlier that one of my favorite parts from you was your white balance part. And that was one of the first parts that Mikkel had like a little thing, and he's like a child. But when you're surrounded by the best, it's like, Jesus, dude.
But you remind me, like even Ståle, I remember in 2008, we had a really good shoot. It was the last big kicker that homie Lars made for Hemsedal. And Ståle was so little that he didn't clear the fun box. He tried, and we had the hip on the side and then the fun box in the middle. And we were planning on doing a frontside hip too. We just didn't have enough snow, and it cost way too much money because it was so big, that fucking thing. So, but it wasn't like a very big jump. It was like 25 meters or whatever. But it was a pretty steep takeoff. And Ståle just like, he would always deck it out. So we would like, for him to clear it, we would tape his legs with duct tape so his snowboard pants wouldn't catch any air. And then one of us grown riders would have to ride in front of Ståle, and then we would deviate off the jump and then he had enough speed. And I remember I even wrote a message to his teacher saying that Ståle is coming with me to film with this TV production, and he's going to be taken out of school. And like, so it's been really cool to watch. First, Mikkel, that I have more contact with, and we have more of a friendship relations, but also seeing that with Ståle. I've seen Torstein come out into the backcountry for his first times. I still remember it clear as day. This magic kid from X Games, and he was going to do a front three off a little pillow and terrace, and he was gripped out of proportion, which I can relate to. But it just felt so good to stand there as the bigger brother at that time and watch him. And I see it now with my kid. This is what snowboarding is so great. The greatest thing about becoming a professional snowboarder is the gift that you bear for the rest of your life, that you have the skill that most people just don't have. And when you take weekend warriors and they look at snowboarding and they really want, you have that superpower to just go teach them, because it's simple. You've done it thousands of hours. That's the coolest thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Touch base on how starting out and breaking on the scene and getting asked to film for Standard Films came about.
So it's like sports school, and then writing for Airwalk at the time. And then Renee gets, pushed into Burton, Renee Huntsman, in that whole era when Burton went from, let's just say, a pretty chaotic team with more than 200 team riders and lots of good times. And maybe the numbers weren't so corporative back then. And then Renee came in, and he, started over in Europe and brought me and JP from Airwalk. He just signed us on Airwalk, but then he shifted job. And he really, you can say lots of things about this man, but for me, he was the key to everything that happened. And the first thing that happened was that, and I just had Drew Stevenson come here, which was fucking awesome because I haven't seen Drew for like 10 years. And he had a European tour. But he was the first person I got put into contact with. So we were like taken out of sports school for the third last semester. For the whole winter, I was gone. I was gone that year, 97 out of 120 days possible in school. And and the coolest thing is that Burton took me out of my school for me to go filming with Drew. It is just rough. But it created, I knew nothing about filming or powder riding or anything. I just knew how to ride the pipe. And at the time, Burton, there was no interest in the contest. The first X Games was planned, because wasn't that in 2000?
Yeah, something like
2000, 2001. So that wasn't interesting. Don't care about the X Games. There's going to be a stupid big jump contest. You're going to learn how to ride big mountains and do freestyle. You're going to be the next generation of the coolest kids. And look at this. And Standard Films and MacDog were already pushing snowboarding into that direction, right? So that was, it was such a dream come true. I never even, like, in sports school, obviously that would have been my biggest dream, to just go film with Standard Films. But it wasn't even part of my dreaming vocabulary at that time. And I can't even remember, but from when I met Drew, I remember I got the license when I was 18. That was the year that I signed for Burton. I got it at 8 o'clock in the morning, first possible hour with the instructor. And then I flew that same day to Livigno, and I signed the contract with Burton. And then I can't really remember, like, there was so much shit happening, but it was Drew and filming with him for Method Mag and their first, that was, I think it was the first or second video magazine ever made for snowboarding. And the copy came out on VHS, bro. That's a long time ago. I still have the cassette down in the basement. So, I mean, from those days, it's just like all of a sudden Renee says, hey, you're going to film with Standard next year. If you do good, you'll get on their A team. So I suggest that you just do what Mike says. And he's welcomed you to come and stay in Tahoe. I'm like, mind blowing, right? And it was just so cool to meet them, because like Mike and Dave are truly my brothers from a different mother. Like like Mike and Dave are a little different, but them two combined is one person that I love. You know, they have all the interest. They have the music, or they taught me to love music and playing music and staying in tune with that. They sure shit taught me anything that I know about snowboarding big mountains, especially Dave. Because Dave was, you know, he's an old, like super OG. He was in Alaska when the freaking guides were smoking bongs in the helicopter, like back in the day. So these guys it completely revolutionized my snowboarding, but I have no kind of, like, it all really happened so fast looking back at it. And it was such a maze of just like flying there first day of the new year every year, and just like wherever the wind blew us. And Mike was the boss. And it was just such a wonderful time. I wish, if I could dream for anything selfishly in my life, I would just say I could live those days for the rest of my life. Those first years of filming with Standard. Just mind-blowingly exciting, you know what I mean?
That's so sick. I'm glad you touched on the Hatchet brothers there, because I mean, I was watching an old TV video probably a year ago. It was a while ago, but one of them had like a front 180, or no, it was a half cab for sure, because those boards were so directional, and it's fucking huge. It's like a Devin Walsh half cab. It's like a 30-40 foot step down, and it's bolts. And I was like, this is one of the sickest clips ever. And it must have been like 1992.
I know. That's probably Dave off from freaking Half Dome or whatever. I can't remember. It's probably the I-80 drop or something. You know, he was the first. I think it was the I-80 drop. He was the first guy to drop that. And that was one of the first cliffs ever dropped. You're like, those guys were so on it. Like, looking back at history, I'm so grateful for those two twins there. They have done so much cool shit for this culture of being able to live as an athlete without contest. I rode 2 official contests my whole career. Like, if we take away all the contest stuff that I did in high school, like junior world championships and stuff like that, I rode for Burton 2 contests.
Like, yeah, which is wild for your era.
Yeah, Tokyo Dome, one time I knocked my head out, never got invited again. I got too drunk and just partied all the time. And I didn't really, like, I never felt good in those occasions. It wasn't my time to shine. My time to shine was out talking shit with the hatchets about fishing and hunting, and just like, yeah, that line there is rad, man. You should ride that. You know, like, that was my cup of tea. And it just, like, it was so easy to like it, because I was just like that. Those guys were so my heroes. And all of a sudden I'm like I remember that in Trysil when I was like 21, I was filming. That's before Standard Films. Then I start like meeting Terje, which obviously was like, for me, like such a big thing. Like, I'm the little Norwegian Burton kid, and like, oh, we're gonna shred together today. I was like shredding with my hero, like a basketball kid getting to play hoops with Michael Jordan, you know? And then quickly from that session in Trysil, I think that was 2001. Then 2 years later, I'm like filming with Terje and Mike Hatchett in Cisco Grove behind Lake Tahoe. And it's just like, I remember like, I was so proud of myself. I just felt like calling home all the time to my friends and everybody and telling them, like, we're sledding around. It's just like crazy time. And just like, yeah, mind-blowing time. The best time ever.
I love when kids meet their heroes, and then, well, they share the story. But would you say that Terje met your expectation that you had put together in your head, or was he a letdown when you met him, or is he super cool?
No, more so. Like, he's become one of my best friends, and it's just, yeah, through the times we just connected on so many. He was like, of course, not like right in there and just like, oh, you're Norwegian, let me hold your hand. But he was like the Craig Kelly guy, the bigger brother. telling you right up what you were good at. Like he's really coached me and been a mentor for me in so much of contract negotiation. It's been freaking awesome. And he is truly the link to Craig and that era and whatever happened back then. So I feel really honored to have grown up with my hero there, and then like meeting him randomly, and then over time connecting with the man, and then enough for him to actually teach me the real, like I feel like it's like the Yoda knowledge of snowboarding if you learn stuff that came directly from Craig Kelly.
True. I did an article recently with King Snow magazine on Craig Kelly, and I watched Let It Ride and watched a bunch of his old films and went through all of his old photos, and it's just, I mean, I could sit here and talk about it for days. Just the style that he brought out into freestyle backcountry riding that hadn't been implemented yet at all. Like he was just making up, like lay backing off of pillows, and the way he would turn down faces. Like you watch everybody
his
right
backside
now.
His backside turn. Give me one rider that like Terry may be close to copying that turn, but I don't think many people can copy that turn. That's some Bob Marley shit there.
Put well. How many standard parts?
6? Was it? I had a shared part, I think, first there.
Notice to appear?
Remember. It was notice to appear, and then it's white balance, paradox.
Wasn't Lost in Transition before Paradox, maybe?
Yeah, Lost in Transition, and then Paradox. And then after Paradox was
Draw the Line, I think.
Draw the Line, yeah. And then I think Draw the Line was my last year, no?
Well, I think there's, what's after that? Catch the Vapors, and then there's...
Catch the Vapors I was on.
And then there's the Storming. No, that's way after. I don't know. Aesthesia or Aesthetica or something like that.
Aesthetica. I got the cover of Aesthetica, and I was supposed to get the last part, but corporate world and a lack of my, I should have stomped that front line in Hemsedal in 2008. Then I would have gotten the last part, but I didn't have a 9. I had a really strong part, but I didn't have any big spins. I was fucking, I landed it, but I was down with my hand, and it was filmed really cool. This paraglider, this is really fucking, like one of the more crucial moments of my career, looking back at it. But yeah, that was Aesthetica.
Well, the front 9 melon that you have in Draw the Line, that tweak on, that tweak on that melon is like, front 9 melon to me is a really tough one to pull off. Most people, when they do them, it just looks like a front 7. They over rotated, kind of. That front side 9 melon, anybody people should go watch that part, Draw the Line, and take notes, because that's one of the best ones ever.
Thank you. I remember that was just like, that was something that year, which is really strange with snowboarding. Like, I remember it to date, like the different grabs, different years. You came back to it after a couple of months, and it just all of a sudden like felt natural, and then it became your kind of safety friend, and you just kind of threw that grab. And that year I had that front side melon was like, I remember it was like really one of my go-tos. And the same as the backside 7 mute. Like now it feels so wrong. I can do a backside 7 indie still, but I just can't get the mute grab in there. It's such a different. But yeah, nowadays, to touch into that, it's really fucking funny to jump. Like I used to be so good at jumping and spinning.
Oh yeah,
I'm such a klutz now. Yeah,
I mean, your back 7 indie and white balance off the corner of that little step down. Oh, I love that clip, especially, and maybe you can elaborate on this more. Everybody right now, the cool thing to do is to grab outside the knee with
I
any
know.
sort of indie, every kid's outside the knee, which is, I get it, skate influence. Lots of people in the mid 90s, early 90s grabbed outside the knee. But then it almost like your era, JP Solberg, the more boxy Devon kind of look, Aero Niemela, that whole crew, everyone started grabbing in between, but still boning the indie. And your
But I
backside,
love the nose bone. The nose bone is the most stylish thing, and it is one of the hardest things to do. Like when you do a good nose bone, it feels like your whole body is like folded together. But looking at the picture, you're like, it's a really, I think nose bone still, it's cool. I see the kids, I see what you mean. And to be quite honest, they have bigger fish to fry because they got to do all these flips and spins that like take G, like they're fucking feeling the G force, you know? So I get it, but in my personal opinion, you can't beat a good nose bone, whatever grab that you do.
when you say nose bone, to specify for our audience, are you talking outside the knee or inside the knee?
Inside the knee and poke it out, just like Nicholas Miller, or a tailbone, like if it's a stale fish. But you know, like it's all about like that boning out the whole body inside of a spin. You have to stop the spin, and you like, I understand that they can't do that when they're going for 4 revelations, but you know, style does matter. And I think that it's more difficult if you're going to do a front 3 and get your, you know, nose up above your shoulder or clean with your shoulder and bone it out and look over your shoulder. It's harder than freaking grabbing an indie around the knee and just like jigging it along. You know what I mean?
I like
it's
that.
it's a whole different grab. It's an easier grab, hands down.
What's your favorite video part you filmed?
Draw the line.
Yeah, that's a really good part. And you're also a psycho for jumping off that bridge.
But that the good part about that is that I filmed, like it was a very difficult year for me in the beginning. Like all those Tahoe shots, I was having a tough time. I couldn't land on my board. And then freaking all those terrace shots were filmed in 3 days, where I ended up in the situation where EJAC wasn't old enough to fly helis without the parents' signature on the contract. And we didn't know this before the day we were going flying. So he got sent home and I got sent out alone with Travis as a filmer and a guide and a heli pilot. And I had my own heli, and there's just like, we usually were like 5 dudes to share all these like circs and zones. Like Cerveza, the one place that we landed, like 4 of my shots are from Cerveza, and it was just like hot lapping. Like it was so fucking awesome. I remember me and the pilot, because I was already doing pilot studies, so I had really good always really good contact with the pilots, but especially that guy, because we were like we buy Playboy magazines. We had like we were like trawling terrace for Playboy magazines that week, and just like sitting in the front seat reading Playboy and checking out some cars, checking out some titties, and then I would go riding. And Travis was ready. It was just fucking like one of the most productive times I ever delivered as a snowboarder was that shoot there in Paris.
Big thanks to Playboy.
Yeah, but and also, do you remember in that part, I got to do something fucking spectacular as a mountain man. I got to ride this S shoot that Travis had seen it. It wasn't really part of the heli tenure, but we were in a very cozy place where Standard Films and Northern Escape Heli were sort of putting some money into a budget to explore new zones. So we had the green flag to fly outside of the, you know, safety zone, and I got to ride that fucking line. That is a beauty and a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to ride. I don't know how much that was, probably like, I don't know, 3,000 feet vertical, like 1,000 meters, and it was just one big S, and it's like in this black rock. And like, it was pretty exciting. It wasn't any difficult riding, but it was very exciting, cool, really cool mission that I will cherish to the day that I go into the grave with my guide friend, Ivan. He guided me into that line.
That was spectacular, especially like when you're halfway, you're probably, you know, you're at that halfway marker and you think it's just going to end and it's going to start fanning out. and you start picking up so much more speed, and then you bank into that next turn.
Dude, it was
It's
such a dream scenario. The snow was so good in there. It was just blower. It wasn't one cinnamon roll to hit on the way down. There was nothing, not one crevasse, nothing. I did no turns. It was going so fast. I remember my ears were going like and then when you're going that fast and you're like pinning down, it's such a comfortable thing to do. When you're slowing down, you just take your arms out and it slows you down so much that you feel like you can turn again, you know what I mean? Like,
oh,
yeah.
the starfish. I love the back
But-
five in that part too. It's like
Yeah.
dunky, and like you have a lot of snow like on your board, and it kind of flares with you. And I love that clip.
that was in Tahoe. That was a morning shot before we were waiting for some Finnish snowmobile team riders coming up to the jump, and me and Dave were always there first, and we were making fun of the Finnish guys because they never knew how to sled. And then we were like, hey, how about that shark fin? You should go hit that. And then Dave drove me up and he set up his camera, and the Finnish kids are starting to come up to camp, and we're about to hit this booter. And I remember it felt really good. I started the day before anybody even took their board on. I had a shot in the back. Dave was like, yeah, that's how Mods does it.
That must have felt good. Nothing better than getting a clip when you're a rider. Your life revolves during the winter, it revolves around getting clips, and you talk to other riders. How many clips do you have? How many clips? And when you're in a lull, like sometimes January, like for us, January is historically pretty slow unless we get pillow snow. Then we can get like some of those good pillow moments and hallway shots. But like this January was pretty lackluster, and like lots of cloud, not the best stability. And I'm like at that freak out point right now where I only have like 3 or 4 clips, and I'm like, I want to have way more clips at this point of the year. But like Rasman's always like, calm down. We never really have clips until like February 15th. And I'm like, okay.
But it's so true. Like you're stressing around early season, battling. But that was like when Tahoe delivered back in the day, it was so good to have Tahoe because you got those bluebird days and you could kill it early, and then you didn't have to sit and wait. Like you're saying, January in Whistler can be very much like January here. Lots of rain, lots of wind, lots of shit.
Yeah.
But when you know, magic March comes along, and you get that 1 7-day bender, you get so many shots you can't even count them. I remember like how much I used to stress, and as we got like, especially as we started using terrace more and more, I always felt like I had an ace up my sleeve the whole season. You know, and just go there and just bang it out. Just like, okay, rolling the dice on some good weather in terrace, the part's safe.
All right, let me ask you this. Who was your favorite to film with during those years of standard? You filmed for standard for like a decade plus. You in
like
and
filmers or riders?
Riders.
Riding with Ejac and John Jay, of course, was just mind-blowing good times. But I also very much cherish the time that I had with Aero and Freddie in Europe in the early days. Really, really fun times. So it's really hard to pick, but I would say the time that we had in terrace, going from, can that have been like 2003 or 4, and going forward to 2009, you know, we were there every year, and we were like, I would spend, some years I spent like more than $20,000 just flying helis and terrace. And the crew of me, Ejac, John Jay, Mark Landvik, and Freddie used to come along. Jonas Emery was part of it. And I would say all those trips are my standout favorite trips. It's just nothing compared to it in my whole career. We were treated like royalty in the lodge town. Like there was no, like it was before we started going there was nothing there. It's just a logging town. And then, you know, so like, it's just really, really, really cool. And also the feeling of being part of it was always really rad to go to Valdez. The few times I got to go there, mind blowing, and so with Haynes. But in Terrace, we were just like, we were the crew, you know what I mean? We had a like, and we also filmed a lot with TGR. Like one year, I think we were like fucking, we were we were 6 riders, and TGR had 8 riders. Like Hugo Harrison, fucking, I remember Hugo Harrison we were hearing on the heli radio, yeah, Hugo's getting flown back to base. What? Where's he going back to base? Burning though. He shat his pants. He went too big. You fucking motherfucker just went so big that he shat his pants. So, and also looking back at it, for my growth as a snowboarder, that's where I got hair on my ball sack. Yeah.
I believe
with
that.
Travis, Mike wasn't there so much. It was mostly Travis Robb, really, like controlling that whole era and being the point man. And yeah, from that first trip with Will Burks, that crazy son of a bitch, the skier Will Burks, he did a line we call super fries, or no, super size me. I remember, like, it was the craziest thing that I've ever seen. The man almost killed himself in the mountain right in front of my eyes, but he somehow magically kept on his skis. Like, he was doing this like giant spine face with this, like, underneath this choke on top. You had to go through this like hourglass choke, and it was open flank, like wide open face. A pretty simple task if it wasn't for the 400-meter death cliff underneath it, right? So Will Burks goes through the fucking choke, and he gets the slough behind him and freaks out, and thinks that the slough is closer than it actually was, and guns it out the chute and onto the flank, totally out of control. One ski, and just like makes it to the end of the flank, just past the cliff. He rolls like 4 or 5 rolls the last part to safety and eats shit. You know what I mean? Like, I remember just like, that was my first like week with big mountains and helicopters, and I was just like, holy shit, my pulse is just like, do I have to go anywhere now? But yeah, I can go on and on for hours about Paris. Mind-blowing shit.
I never like watching a rider like fuck up when I'm about to go next, because then I get in my head, and
Yeah.
then that is the worst. If I was in Alaska, which I've only done the most southern tip, if I was actually like in a heli there to ride lines for my first year ever, and then I see a skier almost die, I'd be like, yeah, I'm good to go home and just have some soup or something.
Yeah, I felt so small. I was just like, I feel kind of uncomfortable anyway, you know what I mean? Oh, here's my little daughter calling, but she can get on the show later. But yeah, you know, like I said, it really formed me. But that trip stands out because it was my, you know, seeing Will Burks was a pretty crazy skier too. I believe he was the first skier like to film a double backflip off a cliff. And I remember him just going through like 2-story building, like such big cliffs, and he was just hucking these fucking huge backflips, eating shit, just tumbling down skis that way, fucking this that way, like losing skis in the backcountry like it's going out of fashion. And I really like, I came back from that trip, like I got it like one shot maybe. Like I think I did one line where I got this snow to cascade over my head, but it was just pure luck. It was no, like I was so gripped, like but that's the coolest part about what I got to experience, because I get to do it here in Norway, but to get into these mountains here in Norway, it creates that you are sort of a mountaineer as well. Here I got to experience it with this really cool crowd of culturally right people to my mind that inspired me, and they were my heroes, and they just bring me out into this, like the North American terrain. There's nothing like it. It's that whole convex madness that starts in Whistler and grows up through northern Canada and into Alaska, and as you get into Anchorage or Valdez, it's just like, fuck. I remember the first time I saw this like 45-degree ramp that they put everybody on. I'm like, are we gonna land there, guys? Isn't that a little bit strong? And they're like, hey, we take your grandmother to that run, bro. And then, you land on it and you're like, holy shit, that's just 40-degree power and it's perfect. But yeah, the mountains you guys have are just stunning. And we have big mountains too, but they're harder accessible, even though we can drive around to them, but they're more of a mountaineering subject than getting to fly that heli and just land on the peak.
What did you enjoy more when you were still fully immersed in being a professional snowboarder? Did you look forward to the hips and the jumps, which you were amongst the most gnarly of all time? And it's weird because your riding was so clean and tasteful. It didn't look that gnarly because you were never like flailing out of fucking control, looking like you were holding on for dear life. Or did you enjoy the backcountry and being out there in the POW with like the Hatchet brothers?
Well, I think the whole package, because if it wasn't for all those humbling hours with the crew and the Hatchet brothers, then I wouldn't have grown strong enough as a rider to be able to come back to Hemsedal and represent. But of course, that the times in Hemsedal stand out because that was the only time where I got to perform on home turf. However, it's hard to compare the photo shoot setting with increasing pressure to deliver and going bigger and bigger. It was a very cool way to end the year. But if it wasn't for all those good times in the backcountry, I wouldn't have been able to perform the way that I did.
Let's switch gears here and talk about just the park side. So
yeah,
for those that know or don't know, you were one of the gnarliest park jump hip guys ever. World record jump. You hit, I remember where I was when I saw that photo. I was in Mrs. Penny Ridge's class, who was my language arts teacher. I was in grade 11, and I remember seeing that and being like, I think it was the front three indie that they published. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on? So maybe take us through like how that whole jump came to be, because you hit the biggest behemoth. You shattered the world record at the time. I don't know if anybody's ever beat it. Maybe somebody knows that. I don't know. But take us through just like the world record jump.
Well,
I need to hear from your side.
Yeah, first and foremost, I think it's important to kind of clarify. I think lots of people have gone bigger here and there in different settings, and jumps today there are some really big step up and over jumps that are. And Marc-André Tart as well. He had a huge jump, which was a step up and over, and they did that from 1080 on it. I believe that was in Meyerhofen. But point is that this kicker was very intimidating because it was a fucking tabletop. So you just don't show up to a tabletop with anything else but land in the right spot, or you fucking eat shit. You go too short and you explode. You go too far and you explode. And that's what I feel that I haven't seen anybody try and top it. And I felt it myself. I don't think you really can make too much bigger of a tabletop without starting to put on like the condom ski suits and going faster. I was going as fast as that jacket would allow me to go forward. You know what I mean? Like the reason why I ate shit was because I hit two little bumps that I didn't see because the light had changed. And that combined with a little bit of side slip on my takeoff was enough to take me back like seriously like 30 meters. And I came around feeling like first rotation on the backside 7, I was gonna make it. And I came around the second time, I was like, holy shit, that's not gonna go. and lucked out. There was no helmet. I had like a pong being in fucking some dragon goggles. And but leading up to it, it was totally random. And I think it was way more crazy the day before when I hit it in flat light with no kick on the jump, but nobody ever showed those pictures. I know Jeff Curtis was there and he has a bunch of pictures, but there wasn't any kick in the jump. But it was way more difficult to hit it. It felt like you were shot out of a fucking cannon. Yeah, I mean, there was hitting that jump was it all coming together to be this record jump was totally random. It was just me and Lars, and as I was touching on earlier, that's one of my great advantages when Burton put so much money into going to Hemsedal, inviting all these people, and Hemsedal also putting so much money into Burton having these photo shoots. Then it was pretty lucky for me to be best buddy with the guy that made the jumps, right? So and I got that extra time in the cat, so I got to sit there for the most part during all building of all jumps and be you know, sort of not in charge, but I could sort of help him understand what we were looking for to get these big jumps going. So I got it my way, right? Which helped this time, because when we were like shaping this jump and we were like, you know how it is. You make the landing and the landing looks rad. The landing was made already when I was in the US or in Canada, and I was coming home and the landing was like insane. And we start pushing out, you know, snow for the jump, and we're like, you know, we just put it where it looks good. And then we cut it and then we measured it and we're like, holy shit, that was a little big. And the kicker was also like, it was hard to see that from the photo, but you know, it was angled that way. So it was totally wrong angle too when you saw it from the top of the in-ramp. But yeah, it was random. And when we cut it, we were like, let's go down and see what the guys say. And then there's like lots of people pissed off, like, oh fuck, we don't, like, none of us want to jump. That's way too big. That's impossible. Fuck, it's not a fucking shoot for mods. And then there's all this fighting, and I was like, that kind of put a fire up under my ass, right? Like, I didn't want to feel like I didn't do it to prove anything. It just randomly happened that way. But I felt like it wasn't all that big, you know, like it was doable. And we tested the speed, and we fucking like had so much speed. So it was like, yeah, let's try it. And then when I tried it, it was me and Kier and Jeff and Lars up there first day when I tried it. And Kier, I remember, I felt pretty proud then, because Kier, I looked up to Kier. You know, he was ahead of me, and he was such a wise man in terms of dealing with industry, and I valued his friendship a lot. So it was good to have him there, but it was also good to see him standing there looking at me like, I'm not fucking doing that, you know, like, but I'll vouch for you that you did it when we go down. And then we went down to everybody and said, Mud's jumped it, so we're gonna have a session. And then we had that session, and I got cocky there with that backside 7. I should have just stopped it at the front 3, and then we would have all ended up sessioning it. And keep in mind, like, Kasu probably went bigger than me on that jump in total, and he did a fucking backside 7. And there is a shot of that. I don't think it ever got used, and it was on a Panasonic PH2 camera, and Nathan Avila filmed it. And I remember watching it, or if it was Sean Aaron or whoever filmed it, we watched it so many fucking times in slow-mo. It is the biggest ninja move that's ever been done on snowboarding. Kasu jumped over, like, they moved the kicker a little forward, but it was still like they moved it like 4 meters forward. So it was still a 33-meter flat, which is still a huge fucking jump. And Kasu jumped not to the sweet spot, but he landed like down here, bro, and fucking bounced so hard that the whole little Japanese body came off like a spring, and he was flat out like a cat, and then back in again and kept riding. Like, we were like, what in the fuck? So I feel maybe I got a little more, I don't know, it's hard to say. I got all the honor that I deserved, I guess, but it was more than it really was. It was played up, and that's how industry and politics work. And it fell in my favor, and I did something right at the right time that got the right repercussions. But to be quite honest, Kasu probably went bigger and more gnarly than me on the same kick.
Did he land anything though?
Yeah, he fucking stuck the shit out of that. But again, they had moved after I broke my arm on that backside 7. You know, it became this like, oh, we don't want to jump that because Mod's fucking crazy. Mod's fucking broke his arm, and he's now in a cast. And let's just move the jump forward. That was like the consensus, because they had like, you know, they had spent a pretty enormous amount of money in cat time to push out all that snow to make that landing. So it wasn't like Hemsedal or Burton were going to be happy with just lunatic Jonsson going off and breaking his hand on the first session. So they I think they filmed on that landing for a whole week. And there's some good shots, but you know, to use that when it became that violent kicker, that was the part of the story in the industry was that I jumped it, then they made it smaller. So it kind of, all those shots made in that kicker were degraded by that first session. You know how it works. It's not A grade if somebody comes and like, so yeah, it didn't, in terms of filming and movie parts, it didn't really make all that much for Burton and Hemsedal, but in terms of footage, they got, you know, there's so many photos from that jump. And it led into that photo shoot the next year when Burton told me, hey, we tried to get Guinness World Record book to come and sign off, but blah, blah, you have to do it again. I have to do it again? No, I'm not doing that shit again. You remember I fucking broke my fucking arm. This shit dangerous. So we were fighting back and forth, and I said that I just don't feel like doing a 1 meter bigger jump. That's like kooky. Why don't we just make the biggest hip in the world, and then I'll go the biggest on the hip instead? And then they built me that fucking beautiful hip. That was probably the biggest hip, that one of the biggest. It was such a perfect hip, and it was so fun to ride. I remember the front side was dead ice and the back side was just, and the nature gave me such a freebie that year too. Like the 2 days of the weather window when everybody was there with cameras pointing and it was sunny, the fucking lake melted. So it became this like moon landscape in the back, and just made, instead of a complete boring white backdrop from all angles, it became the most exciting angle of all time, you know what I mean? But that was the same place, and it was, I guess that did more for me. The jump kind of pushed me into being able to say to Jake, like, hey, put me on the A team or I'll fuck off. I didn't say it as cool as I did to you now. I was a little more shaky in the voice and be like, hey Jake. But in terms, it gave me the leverage to get to be the catalog writer, you know, the guy that was like that year when after that big jump, and then I delivered one more time with that hip. Like it was pretty easy to be mods around Burton for the next couple of years, like 2006, 2007. I had pretty much only yes from Burton, which was awesome. And I took it for granted, of course. And I appreciate it as fuck now, of course. Like, I don't know, it was just awesome time.
Did anyone else hit that hip with you?
Yeah, they tried to make it into like this. You remember that movie they made for Right or Wrong?
No, is it a Burton movie?
Yeah, they made a with Matt Goodman, and it was this big Hollywood production. We all called it For Wrong and Wrong, but that's another story. But they came and filmed for that, and they wanted me to like jump alone because we're gonna have the heli there, and it was like Mods jumps alone. And I remember it came to a point where I'm like, no, I'm not fucking jumping. It's like what's fun of fucking jumping alone? You know what I mean? So we had an ultimatum there. We could all session the hip, but when the helicopter was going to film, I would ride alone. I didn't like, it felt like they were trying to make me a little bit going Evel Knievel. There was even words of I don't want to mention names, but there were some people telling me that I was going to try and snake Danny Way and jump the Chinese wall before he was going to do it on the skateboard, because the rumor was he was going to do it in the summer and I was going to do it in the winter. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to fucking jump the Chinese fucking wall before Danny Way. No. So it was pretty. The hip and everything, like that jump and that hip, 2005 and 2006 made my career.
What was that the biggest hip you've ever hit then?
We built that one in 2008. The one that we had to tape Ståle's pants so he can make it over the jump. And by size, that was 2 meters longer. And it was, I think, 1.5 meters taller. So that was a bigger hip, but they didn't get as much exposure. And I think I went bigger on that second hip as well.
Dang.
It's hard. It's so hard to, like, they all, like, we didn't put any sticks. Obviously, there was talks and discussions whether we should put the measuring stick on or not. And back then it was, you know, it was okay to say that that wasn't cool. You know what I mean? That was kind of the cool thing, to not do stuff like that. So
yeah, what would Ingmar do?
Yeah, but like we're just like, we felt like that was, we wanted the shot. That was the whole philosophy of the Hemsedal photo shoot. We wanted beautiful shots with that beautiful background, the green valley and the big airs and the coolness. And we didn't want that stick there, which, you know, maybe would have made it better for the corporate world to put numbers on it, but that was culture. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than going to Super Park and then do your biggest method ever beside a Gatorade bottle that's inflated. You're like, fuck the god.
What a ripoff. What a ripoff. But yeah, I'm yeah. What's that?
What's your favorite shot you've ever got on a hip?
I think it's that it is that cover shot that Jeff shot of me, that Burton air. I think so. Fucking, it looks bigger than it is, you know what I mean? Like it looks bigger than it felt. It's just such a damn good shot that he got. It was a good angle. Like I said, the nature and the background came and played along. So I think that's the best shot that I got on the hip.
Yeah, those hip shots were absolutely psycho. I remember being a kid and seeing them and being like, holy fuck. So my next question to you is, what was the driving force behind this type of reckless behavior of hitting? Like, did you break up with a girl, like, or
No, it was my way of trying to be one of the world's best snowboarders, which was my goal.
Well, I think that you easily achieved that goal after the biggest air, followed by the video parts. You know, you don't want to be the guy that's known for just the biggest air without having like the entire community behind you, because you're still filming like sick video parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're doing like the white balance thing and stuff like that, and you're integrated in there with the hatchets, and you're getting photos in the right magazines, and then you have the biggest air. That's dope. But if you don't do any of that and you're just this random guy who comes out of nowhere and just hits the biggest air, it's kind of like there's an element of who cares.
Do you remember when Michael Chuck did a double backflip in the pipe? He pretty much lost every sponsor he had. You know, it wasn't cool to be that guy. So that's the cool thing about the era where I was pro, that you were governed. You couldn't become a jock. That's what you're trying to say. Like a jock that comes in and just goes for gold and nails it with no style, no story. That's not cool. That's not part of what snowboarding is, you know. And that's what I always, the driving force was to use. I just want, like, I was never like, I grew up riding with JP, you know, in my early pro years, and he's such a technical wonder kid. And he would put everything down. Like I would struggle and maybe like eat shit 15 times before I get my shot. But I felt like if I took down technicality and went up in speed, it was easier for me to control.
I'm riding with JP in those early days must have been wild. That kid's style is amazing.
Yeah, but so mind-blowing. And he was used to this West Coast. Out here on the West Coast, you have way more powder than you have, say, in Oslo or Hemsedal. So I was more of a kid that grew up riding icy pipes and parks. And maybe that's why I felt comfortable later in my career on these soft kind of spring snow park kickers. But JP, he was like forged more into a power rider already, and he was so good, you know, like I remember he just like learned trick after trick after trick. Like even when we went to Stewart, me, him, and Mikey Rads, when Mikey was still a little kid and he wasn't on the A team, and me and JP were like the crazy rebellious A team riders, and JP did what we then called a crab 10, the first double cork cab 10 ever put down in the backcountry. Fucking sick as shit, and such a power. Like, it wasn't a big jump, it wasn't any spectacular, but his style and technique just made that little shit jump into one of the sickest and most influential things that happened all year that year in snowboarding. Like, double cork, we talked a lot about double corks in the backcountry before they became common goods. And still today, you don't see very many people just doing natty double corks, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's a big one. You don't see the natty riding. It's gonna be wild to see people like hit a wind lip and do like a natty front 10 melon. You're like, wow, that's gonna get nobody can say shit at that point. Like,
yeah, but imagine if Marcus Kleveland now goes full ape shit on Big Mountain and gets into natural selection. I mean, not just him, but for me, it's easier to mention his name, but he's just one of them kids that has no remorse for anything that's technically difficult.
No,
so
totally.
If he gained some mountain skills,
oh, big time. I mean,
I'm sure he would be, him or anybody, like, sorry to say for Mark and those boys, but Mark is already there. I mean, the shit that him and Ben and Mikkel now put down is so insane. But it's still kind of, John Jay and Travis can still put him out. But I have a feeling that Marcus and that generation are going to potentially bring something to the table that is going to be even impossible for the beast man himself, Travis, to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. I think guys like Mons Roislin, Marcus Cleveland, like all those guys, they're going to be the modern day Stahle Torsteins that bring that element to the backcountry that us old heads, whether we like it or not, are going to be doing things that we can't even comprehend, like triple chicanes off of the forum step down.
yeah, you know, like, it's going to happen. Like, if we can think it and dream it, it's going to happen. Like we talked about going into the whole podcast with evolution. The world is like that. If you can think it, it's going to happen. And it's probably even going to happen more than you can think.
I agree. I think it's going to happen at an accelerated rate too. Like everything, I feel like every year snowboarding is going up. I feel like the cab 9 and the 1080 lingered around for a lot of years, and then it just went cab 12, 14, 16, 19. Like, it's just like, and it's just,
and dude, what happened to those frontside indies that were delivered in the pipe in X Games right now? Did you fucking see that shit?
Oh yeah,
that was some of the biggest airtime I've ever, like, and for one that loves to and can really relate to that feeling of gunning it into a transition and going for that weightless fucking top moment, hats off to the kids, dude, for doing that shit. That is so big out of a pipe. I don't care how perfect transition is or how big the pipe is or whatever. That is just mind-blowing to watch. And it's like, even Terry is like the cab 9. He fucking lingered on in the pipe as the best pipe rider in the world for fucking 3 generations extra, where none of the kids could beat him if he put on a good show, like referring to Arctic Challenge, where he was really already outdated and a senior rider, like 35 years and older. But till Terry was like 45 years old, in my opinion, still current as one of the best fucking pipe riders in the world. And I hope he doesn't get mad at me for saying this, but he can't compete with these kids. It's just, they're so fucking good. Like, they're on like levels above him, which is just insane. And that's why I think it's when you have snowboarding, it's such a diverse thing, right? There's so many elements to it. they're bound to leap forward in different rhythms. And pipe has leaped forward, big jump has leaped forward. Jibbing has sort of kind of stood still a little bit compared to how much it leaped forward when I was young. When we were starting to film, after MacDog and Jeremy Jones and Forum and all that happened, where jibbing kind of got back. For the era before that was more Tom Burton, kind of big mountain driven, you know what I mean? So we leap forward in these crazy uncontrolled patterns. And I have a feeling, like I said, that corporate world that is now such an important part of the mix in the future, they're gonna see how much it's gonna shine a light on how much it means if you are that rider that can, if you could jib like a champion and you can win the X Games and you can throw that natty double cork off a fucking Alaska spine. Well, I think and I really hope that's where snowboarding goes.
All-terrain beasts like Mark McMorris. It's a good look.
Yeah, McMorris is insane. Like, but he like still Travis can beat him on a good day. But
Totally.
I have a feeling like if you there has to be a leap forward at some generation. It's bound to happen soon. You know what I mean? And I have a feeling.
Sorry, continue.
No, I have a feeling that Marcus and his generation is gonna. One of those kids is just gonna step into that natural selection. And if it wasn't for Travis, we wouldn't have had a measuring stick towards it. You know what I mean? Because it wouldn't have been nothing against the World Free Riding Challenge, but it doesn't portray the most difficult part of mountain riding, in my opinion, which is
I totally agree.
Yeah, which is throwing that animal style freaking consequential freestyle into the whole mix. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where it's going to go, and I have a feeling that we're going to see, because of the natural selection, we're going to be able to see a very what would you call it, like a significant, is what I'm trying to say, leap forward in the next 5 years.
Totally. I mean, I wonder if anyone's ever going to kind of catch up. Well, they will, but there's like Travis is really good at the freestyle element that I think like the Marcus Clevelands, McMorris, Ferg and stuff like that. But then there's an other element to Travis's riding that taps into like the Manuel Diaz, the J Robs, the like those type of psychos who are riding like big exposure lines that have multiple key entry points that you can't fuck up. And I think a lot of those riders are going to steer clear of that because of how beast mode you have to be to tackle those lines. There's a reason why there's only a Lucas DeBari every 10 years, because it's like it takes a special fucking person who absolutely looks at life differently than anybody else to power down a mountain like those fucking animals.
Like, but like Travis, like the shit that he's done. Do you remember those fucking early on? What was his first movie called again?
Art of Flight.
Art of Flight. Where he does that switchbacks at 5 into the line, where all the rest of us boys are like, we felt like we were like talking about it, like Jack, John Jay, and everybody's like, have you heard? Have you seen that shot? It's fucking crazy. Like, he had absolutely no remorse for fall zone, you know what I mean? Which, like you said, he is a special type of person, but he did create and forge his name through being a freestyle kid. You know, that's what Travis was. And, you know, mind-blowing good at freestyle, going big, and he's taken that into the mountain and gained the knowledge that you have to gain in the mountain that is totally separate to the air skill or freestyle skill, whatever you bring in there. And that's what it's going to be interesting to see. But one of the kids from this new generation is bound to be the guy to take it forward. But I think only every so and so many generations you'll get people like Travis or Terje or Sean, for that matter, that we haven't even talked about, which is an iconic and very important figure in our culture, like straight up too beastie in such a crazy way that he almost, like, I feel like Sean grew out of snowboarding. He was that good in everything.
Well, he was
that
also
did.
a pro skateboarder that a lot of people just forget. Like he's
I
just
know,
like
I know.
he was insane.
And like doing the first cab 9 on a skateboard in a vert ramp, and the fucking skaters are so jealous that they're starting to diss him. Like, yeah, he has that snowboard style, you know, like, come on, dude. He fucking crushes it in the Olympics, and it does fucking, yeah, hats off to Sean. But I feel like, you know, there's only, like, look at how many people like that. For me, it's Sean, Terje, and Travis, for me, are the 3 knights of our sport per today.
I mean, you could argue, I feel like a couple like
Oh yeah,
curveballs, you could throw like Craig Kelly in there just beforehand. And then
yeah,
you could
beforehand,
maybe
yeah.
Mark McMorris could get pushed into that now. I feel like with
yeah.
his new, that's a little bit based on medals and merit and stuff like that.
No,
Travis's is almost the hardest.
Skills,
pardon me?
Also skills with Mark. Mark's fucking awesome. He rides, like, you see him now at X Games. Fucking, yeah. He keeps pushing it, and he's hungry. He's so hungry. He has that same hunger as Travis, but he still needs to put. That's the cool thing about Travis. He's my age. He's put in some fucking time to get his knowledge. That knowledge, that's like 2 careers to be able to get that knowledge. Like 1 career as a freestyler and the whole career as a mountain rider.
Maybe let's quickly touch on, for you, which I feel like most riders is never an easy transition, is going from, like, you know, Burton, your time with them. Why did that come to a close? And kind of take us through those ending years of your career, because to me, as someone who was just watching it, I felt like you had a lot of gas in the tank still. So maybe just touch on that, because I feel like that's never a fun time for anybody's career. But
no, it definitely wasn't. Let's just call it. It wasn't a spiritual high time in my career. But thank you for saying that. And yeah, I feel like I still have gasoline in the tank. You know what I mean? If I put 2 years into training and riding and shredding like I used to be, I still have that mind, but I just don't have that hunger. And that is a product of, I guess, just living away from it for 10 years. But at the time, so now you're talking to me prior to me getting a very, I got this diagnosis for a back disease. And it's a very difficult name. I can't remember how to say it, but it's an autoimmune thing that I've had potentially since I was about 20. So I had a lot of back pains in the later, or through my career, I had back pains. But as I got closer to my 30s, I had like pretty heavy back pains from time to time, not always. But it still allowed me to drive and go. But then with Burton, that was unfortunate. It was really unfortunate that I broke my fucking arm, or else I probably would still ride for Burton. Because when I broke my arm, I was supposed to be in Switzerland and go straight from Switzerland to meet Terje in Terrace. Me and Terje were going to be in Terrace with 2 helis and double set of filmers and guides. We're just going to be like, it was our time to have a trip together. And that was going to be sort of my way forward, was to do more trips with Terje and make sure that we were engaging on some cool stuff that would fit our style of riding. That was the agreement. Then I go break my arm, and then that whole season falls away. And then I got really bad medical advice at the Olympic gym in Norway, and broke my arm again the year after in Alaska, which physically sucked balls, because all of a sudden I was standing there with my overarm just hanging loose, and I was like in the middle of a glacier field that I was planning to gun it out towards. And I was like, I didn't realize my career with Burton ended right there and then, but looking back at it, I had sort of a feeling that was a monumental tumble that I did out there. in the mountains. And I just backtracked my way down and did my recoup there and was back, and we're negotiating. And you know how, like, back then I took it real serious, and I felt really like stabbed in the back because we were negotiating for so long. We were negotiating fucking 90 days. And the whole time during negotiation, it was just always talking about future. And then it was just like this, it was like they were doing it on purpose to piss you off, the way that I got left off, you know what I mean? And it really left me in this whole like, so we're already into the summer and season on the Southern Hemisphere is about to start. And I'm left without 5 sponsors, you know what I mean? And with no pre-warning. And I was pretty fucking pissed. So then
like
that demotivated me a whole lot. For about half a year, I was like kind of not really like motivated. I just didn't really know what to do. But then slowly but surely, I made my way back out. Started talking to the Yes Boys, obviously, with those my friends. And they had a brand, so they gave me boards and, you know, a little bit of travel aid. I could go with them and film. And ended up getting to know Nico Noland and the guys up in Haynes, and I ended up having some fantastic years, signing with Sweet, this company from Norway that makes the helmets. You know, just having a good time, and then spending. My big dream then was to bring heli skiing to Norway. So I took the heli license. So the 4 years after Burton, I stayed, or 3 years after Burton, I stayed in California and did random riding with far less pay and far less travel budget. But, you know, I had a contract also with Aerial 7, that headphone company. So I had some dough and I could live the life. But amongst this, I'm starting to get more and more pain, you know what I mean? I'm starting to become 32 years old. I'm like, fuck. It felt like I was like having to beg for money to get somebody to sponsor me. And then I was just, you know, like I was still a little bitter at Burton for letting me go the way that they did, but I was starting to kind of like gather my senses about how much they actually gave me instead. And with the whole back thing, that I learned in 2019 was an actual thing. Because at the time I thought it was just like, oh, that's natural. I mean, I was the guy that ate shit and always go the biggest and ate shit all the time. So I figured, fuck, that's just how it's supposed to be. But then, you know, as I moved here and started becoming a working man and doing not so much physical training and physiotherapy and shit that I would do a lot when I was snowboarding, it really became so present that I had to go to the hospital and like check it out. And then I figured out, and now I do this. I have to take I have to take an immune system lowering needle every week to keep my immune system from not crapping out on itself and trying to destroy my back.
So that's got to be, because you made a lot of sense of it. Because if I was in your shoes, I'd be like, damn, like this is definitely just from years of snowboarding. But then
I thought so forever. Do you remember Tommen, the old guy with the beard?
Oh yeah, very well.
Yeah. So Tommen, after I bought this farm, he would come here and stay here for 3 or 4 months out of the year and help me at the farm. And it was in 2018, I think it was, he said to me in his raspy voice, "You need to go check yourself, man." I'm like, okay. Yeah, you look worse than me, you know. Okay, I'll go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor and got all this blood tests doing, and then MR, and it took like fucking 9 months of checking. And there you go, there it was. And then first needle. Since then, I haven't had any real pain at all. But I need to. but I need to keep it in check. Like I made myself a sauna. So I carpented a sauna, so I have a sauna, and I train every morning. I skip rope a little bit and stretch and do some yoga. I don't have to be a juice monkey, and like I'm not there screaming at myself, but that in short, this let me see. I think I googled it earlier. Yeah, it's called ankylosing spondylitis, and it means that your tissue is growing around your joints to eliminate them. That's what your immune system is trying to do.
Your immune system's attacking itself.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
My fiance has an autoimmune disease, 2 of them,
Oh.
and yeah, so I've kind of
So she might be doing the same needle. She might be doing the same needle as I do.
Well, maybe in the future. Let's hope not. Right now, she caught it really early on, and so she's been heavy on just diet, and stress relief is a big thing for anybody with autoimmune. It's just like the stress
100%.
triggers it, so it's like doing things and creating a lifestyle for yourself that lowers your stress at all costs is super important, as well as in this day and age, I feel like autoimmune diseases and stuff, to me, who's not a doctor or anything like that, have come through the new processed lifestyle that we all live, whether it's the alcohol or the food and snacks that we eat. So for yourself, going down to working on a farm, going hunting, stretching, a sauna, a daughter, like your lifestyle that you're creating seems to help a lot with a healthy lifestyle with an autoimmune disease, which I'm sure you can attest. Yeah, and surfing.
And surfing cold water to add on, because it's like, fuck, do you get to work extra because of that wetsuit? But I feel like now that I have it under control, it's a gift. Everything I got from snowboarding is a gift. Sitting now 10 years after, it's 10 years since I moved from California. Or it's actually right now on February 13th, 10 years ago, I paid for the farm. So it's like, it felt really bad for a little while. I was confused to let go. I still feel today that it was really like dirty way. And again, you see it happening again with certain people that just like, there's apparently no etiquette in how to let go of a snowboarder. You know what I mean?
There's definitely an approach that most team managers and brands don't seem to take. And I think that what that does, it dehumanizes and removes an element of compassion. Yeah. And then you really feel like it was nothing. When you give, like, you were on Burton for a long time, household name on Burton. Like, when I think of you, I think of Burton. And when you put so much and do so much for a brand, and then you get let go in a bad way, not only is it going to leave a bad taste in your mouth, but it's like, man, was I just nothing to you guys? Like, I worked hard. I did my end of the job. It's like, if you're going to let me go, like, do it in a compassionate manner that shows that you really cared about me as a rider and as a person.
Yeah, but it is, when you keep, like, for me, I'm not going to complain, but if you're going to look at it from an ethical and strictly Western society built principle, it's really unethical to do that. You're taking the 10 years out of this youth person's life and you're leading them on, giving them money, enough to feel special, far from enough to make their whole life complete. Far from enough. Only thing that you're doing is taking away time from that young person's life, where it could set itself up with education, building companies, whatever that would last them the whole life. And on top of that, these kids are throwing their life into the air so that you can make more money, setting their life and their limbs at stake so you can make more money. and then you have the nerve to fucking just let him go like trash. That's fucking unstylish, dude. I don't care who you are and how much money you have. What the fuck are you thinking about? And again, I felt like that. And I still feel like I got way more out of snowboarding, and all the shit that Donna and Jake gave me, I still appreciate so much. But it's really sad to see that this is not something that just happened to me. There's so many names before and after me that have gotten the same treatment, which is, I think, if snowboarding has anything to work with themselves on, it's that attitude right there.
How do you think
Look at the
brands should approach
first.
letting go a rider then? Like, what do you think's the best case scenario? Like, okay, like at the end of the day, you know, you are just a marketing tool, but does it hit a certain threshold where like you've been on the brand for 10 years, therefore we have to let you go in a different way than somebody who's just been on the team for like 3?
But at least then, like I mean, if you're gonna, if you worked for, if you're a CEO for a big company and there was a planned exit of your services, there's always a 2-3 year period where you work together to find that next step. In all sort of business etiquette, if there's no bad standing and if it's good standing, it's supposed to, you're supposed to honor the good business with making sure that you apart in safe ways. Okay. And of course, you're a stronghold when you're a company like Burton, and you have billions and billions and billions, not to speak of Burton's stronghold with their family economy. It's like, I feel like, and you can't just point the finger at Burton. I really hope that changes. Take care of your riders. Lift them as far forward in life as you can when you have invested in 10 years of their life in the first place.
Yeah, there's definitely a more compassionate way. And I have lots of friends that have been let go, and I feel like it takes a really strong mind, aka the snowboarder, to come to terms with that quick. And I think that your generation, the way that a lot of, well, I'll just say it, a lot of Burton riders have been let go in the past, that I feel like me and my crew and the majority of riders just expect that one day the carpet's going to get swept out from the feet and it's just going to end. And that's happened with me with Billabong just pulled out of snowboarding. I rode with them for like 8 years, and there's no like, you know, it's just over, and it is. And they pulled out of snowboarding completely. So it's like, not like I felt like Bodie or Vole or any of us got pinpointed. It's just like, they're just out of snowboarding. But that in itself is already weird, because it's like they were, I don't know, Billabong snowboarding kind of like made sense there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a compassion element that goes along with it, because these riders really, you know, they put a lot into it, and it is emotional when you do just get like let go to nowhere and you just feel kind of like a used kid, and you're just getting to that point as like a 30-year-old to start understanding all these things. I feel like a lot of riders that are like 25 that start getting paid, and then at 30 they already kind of have the knowledge. But when you have taken a kid that's 15 and developed them over the course of their young youth, that's different, because that kid never knew anything in the first place. And then they don't really have a skill set outside of snowboarding. And then you don't give them a heads up when they're 30 and they have kids and they have a life. It's like, there needs to be a little bit more of like a humane element added to there. So I agree.
Exactly. Yeah. The humane, it's just a normal ethic in any other business comparison. Be nice to each other. You're not in it to like yeah, it's we all understand there is a shelf life for you. I'm not saying it's not the brand's responsibility to rehire you as a team manager or educate you or whatever. However, have the decency of planning that exit. That doesn't cost any money. It just costs planning, and again, maybe an uncomfortable situation. So there is another uncomfortable situation that these team managers need to have. Fucking sit down with your team rider and bro down with him, and don't stand there and tell him that you're, I'm selling you into senior management is good, and then and then you're lying the whole way. Just like such an unnecessary piece of bad energy to put on such a beautiful relationship.
I agree. Maybe we could quickly talk on Toman. You brought his name up quickly. Like his significance in your life, I feel like a lot of Norwegian riders specifically have a connection with this individual. I only know him from just seeing his face in lifestyle photos and at like a lot of your local events. But like, who was this individual and why does he have so much importance to this local, Norwegian snowboard community?
The short answer is that he is the first snowboarder of Norway. That's the short answer. But homie is just, he's for anybody that's been riding Hemsedal over the course of the last 30 years, he has been a very common face to see. And also for whoever cared enough about snowboarding and skiing to go to Stryn, the summer ski resort, which, back in '94 with the Trans World cover, and snowboarding was actually happening there at Stryn, you know what I mean? It was internationally, people would go there to get some shots in the summer. And he was of course there. So in the early stage, he played a big role for showing Sebu Kulberg and Terje and Daniel and those guys when they were young. And at that time, Tommen is a little older than my age now. He's like 45, 50. And then moving into the 2000 there, and Arctic Challenge, 99 is over. Arctic Challenge is moving south. Tommen is lucky and gets Arctic Challenge to his main resort. And this is learning about Tommen and after his passing and reading his memoirs and stuff. He was actually really depressed back then. He felt really outcasted by society. He lived for snowboarding, and he really has written so many memoirs of how much he loves the dancing with the white lady and how he feels snowboarding is the only thing really worth living for. And he really just fucking loved snowboarding so much that he would just, if there was a chance for him to help, he would help. And he did that so much that he ended up getting to work at the ski resort in Hemsedal, right? And the people there in Hemsedal is a very small farm town, especially talking 15, 20 years ago, extremely small, like 1,600 inhabitants. And they're very they either include you or they exclude you. And they very much took care of Tommen. So Tommen finds life there. He's a little bit depressed, but then comes snowboarding and starts with 99 airwalk and everything there. And Arctic Challenge is there in 2001. And he's just this crazy, you just tell from a mile away, whether you're a Japanese photographer, American, Switzerland, wherever you came from, that is snowboarding right there. And he would be happy to partake in any interview or any, he was so keen to talk to the industry. Finally, for Tommen, he starts snowboarding back in the 70s when it comes out, right? He's doing what's called Svingbo. Svingbo is pre-snowboarding. It's like windsurfing on snow. Have you seen those?
No.
Yeah, it's like a ski. It's like ski lifted on the ski with the full sail. It's like windsurfing on snow. So he's got this culture of just loving the sideways lifestyle. And then all of a sudden, for 8 years running, the whole industry pours into his resort, right? Hemsedal. And that's where Tommen becomes known to the public at large, sort of in snowboarding. And at that time, I had known him sort of, but through those photo shoots, I really got to know him. And then I moved to Hemsedal I bought a house there and I lived there for a little while and got to know him even more. And I still to the day don't think I've met anybody that really cares or cared for that sensation of sliding sideways as much as him. I mean, homie, he had 1 year with 275 riding days. So fucking, how do you do that? 275 days out of 365.
What a fucking legend.
That's 3 months out of the year where you don't snowboard at all, and the rest of the year you're snowboarding every fucking day. and the cool thing is that he has so many crazy stories, which really attracted and made it easier for him to infiltrate this photo shoot system that took Hemsedal, right? Like Drew Stevenson, fucking anybody, Jeff Curtis, like there's so many different personalities, and Tommen would be like a social butterfly. Like it was his time to fly around and get his snowboard nectar for the year, you know what I mean? And he would just like, he would impact a lot of people at that time. And it really, in his memoirs, it's really nice to read now after his passing that those like he could have easily just gone down into depression and died if that didn't happen. Like the way that he is writing in this is like in 94 to 97, he's really out of it, didn't like his life at all. And this happens, and there's way less memoirs, but only happy memoirs, and they all bind into this time when his family, like he called it, his family came to Hemsedal, and he really felt like a part of the international snowboard family.
Well, he was, because I even know who he, like, I live in Canada, and like that face, like, I mean, it's iconic. I'll share something of him on the podcast, and people are definitely, anybody who's been watching old snowboard videos, it's like he's either in it with a lifestyle or just in like the better magazines that run tasteful lifestyles. He was always like integrated into like articles and stuff like that. I always wondered who this guy was, and unfortunately it was until his passing when, like, I think Mikey Rentz was kind of speaking on him, and how I knew Mikkel was really close to him, and it was pretty upset, if you will, over his passing. And I was like, oh, no way, that's who that guy was. And so it's nice to hear you share a little bit of insight onto who he was, because I think he played a...
The coolest thing about Tommen, he was a fucking roadie for Grateful Dead, bro. And there is no joke in this, like, he had so many crazy stories. So a lot of them you had to weed out, but I've seen his arm patches that he had in this little tin can. Tom Bjerknes roadie, Grateful Dead, like for like 69, 70, 71, 72. He was over there, dude, rolling around with the band, bro. And that's the coolest thing. And he was totally fucking loose. Like he like told me that, you know, when he was 30, he guaranteed himself never to see 40. He was like alcoholic, doing all the drugs in the world, enrolling in all these governmental programs that he could find, you know, the military testing speed, whatever he could find of that, he would do it. And he would like do these roadie jobs for bands, and just, he was just total freak show. And to see, like, he claimed, and I believe it, snowboarding saved his life. If it wasn't for the dance with the white lady, and randomly for him, his resort that he chose to settle ended up being the circus for snowboarding for 8 years running. It's just, it was totally meant to be. It was totally a snowboarding culture. He's forged out of the nose of snowboarding, you know what I mean?
Well, and it was like a tribe, like the tacky as that word kind of is sometimes, but it is in its truest sense, like snowboarding is like this herd mentality tribe, and he found his people there, you know what I mean, that embraced him and liked who he was as an individual, and didn't think he was an outcast, and got to hang out with people like you and Mikkel and these people who to most are larger than life. And then you get involved in the community and you realize that the vast majority of us are easygoing, just pretty rad individuals that don't really care who you are, what your background is. We're down. You know what I mean? That's the one thing about snowboarding, is it's really inclusive, and more than ever is it that. And for him to find his group of people after being down in the dust with drinking and drugs, it's like, that's amazing. And I feel like skateboarding, snowboarding, and surfing, and many sports for that matter, just sport in general, has that effect, because people find like a sense of belonging with those people, even if it's, whether it's hockey or whatever, you know, you need to find like a community and a group of people that you can shoot the shit with and feel comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah. But again, I think snowboarding, and especially back then, was unique in the fact that the bar was pretty low for how you looked and what you represented. As long as you loved snowboarding, you were part of the crew, right? And I feel like, back to him, he's such a good example over how healthy that is of a outlook on the culture. Instead of being, I hear that you're bringing up other sports, and I totally agree. Find your, like, whether it's religion, not even sport, if you find your group and your herd, that's it. But what I appreciate the most about surfing, snowboarding, and skating is that it's always about the performance and the love for the performance. Like, again, Michael Chuck did double backflip. Back then it was so unpopular to do double flips that he was almost kicked off of the fucking side of the planet of snowboarding just for doing it. And now the kids are winning and becoming better and better for doing triple backflips. So it's there's a great deal of acceptance in snowboarding, as you're touching on. And again, we're touching back into what the corporative world needs to do. They need to listen to exactly that. They need to find a way to make money on that, whatever they need to do. Just don't try ever to make snowboarding into anything else than a very accepting culture, because that would be the same as making a rock into a lemon.
It's just never going to be a fucking lemon.
Yeah, it's never going to be. It's always going to be a gray fucking rock right there. It's probably 400 million years old too.
Oh, fuck, that was good. Okay, maybe squeeze in right now. I feel like this is a good time for it. That Peter Line quote that we were kind of talking about the other day.
Yeah, so I can't remember where it was, but it was in the beginning of my time here. And it really helped me in my, I never had really any sorrow. Like I told you, I had like that half year of sorrow, and then I started my heli thing, and I nailed the heli license. I was stoked on that. And then I moved into this place, but I still kind of felt that empty void that wasn't there anymore. And then it really stood out to me when he said, like, in this interview, that in his own special Peter way, that, you know, becoming a pro snowboarder, actually the best part about becoming a pro snowboarder is being let go and moving on to the other side. Because you grew up as this kid with these superstars, and all you wanted to be was like them. Then you became one of them. But then slowly but surely, as you were one of them, all this responsibility of delivering and doing the right thing for the sponsor, the contracts, the money, it's a confusing time. And it's not just about snowboarding. But then that all comes to the explosion of you getting fired, and then starts the best time of a pro snowboarder's life. Because now you are that superhero that you dreamed of being when you were a kid, and you answer to nobody. You do that flat spin back 5 for yourself and nobody else. You do that pow turn better than anybody around you. You do it for yourself and nobody. And I got to say, I was an impatient rider filming. I would love to have been riding more filming less, but that's the thing about filming. You gotta wait. There's not, you know, if it was any negativity about filming, it was that you had to stop so much riding. And that's the cool thing now. When you go out riding, again, I'm not pushing it anymore, but I really feel that superpower. It's in my legs, and it will be there until I can't walk anymore. And that's the best thing I got out of the snowboarding.
I love that. I also I'm still filming video parts right now, and that's the one thing that I really get jealous of when I go on the hill and I see all my friends who just work to snowboard. They don't give a fuck about being a pro snowboarder, and they're they love watching the videos. They just shred for themselves, and they've been doing it for 25 years, and it's just been about them. And then I go and I feel like so much of my day is about trying to find a spot to get a clip. If I don't get a clip, I get really upset with myself.
Yeah.
But then there's this other feeling that they don't get, which is the beauty of working with a photographer and a filmer, getting a clip, all of that coming together. And it's like also the best feeling in the world. But I have to say that the chapter that's inevitably ahead for me, which is getting let go and the explosion of the end of professional snowboarding for me, I think that that's going to be a really fun chapter. Like Peter Line said, like, I think that I almost the way you articulated that, I'm kind of looking forward to it in a way.
Yeah, but you should. And it's like, and you get time. Like for me, it's just been awesome. I still feel like when I go snowboarding, like last year, I beat Mark McMorris in bang slalom, bro. I had four fucking days on snow with my daughter, not one single day for myself, and I beat the best snowboarder in the world in the bang slalom. It's a small feat, but for me, it really felt like I still got it. You know what I mean? And that's awesome, because I've always been contest driven. I feel good about the accomplishment, like most people do. And for me, it's one of the accomplishments of my life that I'm the most proud of, is that I put all that time into learning snowboarding, like you're doing. And you cannot learn snowboarding better than when you're going out with a photographer and a filmer, and you're not just shredding down, but you're perfecting it. If you just put down a finger on the landing, or you flail your arm one time, as your friends that are just weekend warriors, they will never experience that thoroughness and that joy that you get out of nailing exactly that task.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for achieving something, working hard towards something, and then doing it to the best of your ability, and then that be filmed and it give you, like, any snowboarder that's professional is super analytical about their riding. So it's like you watch the video shot, and if you can bring your vision to life and then that be captured in a way where you think that best showcases that skill set of that trick, it's like that coincide or what's that word I'm looking for? Anyways, that is a fucking thing of beauty when that all comes together.
It's insane. And I don't think that you can learn anything physical without doing that, like to being one of the best out there. You know what I mean? Like, it puts you into this loop where you look at yourself, not only you, but the filmer is looking at you and analyzing you, the photographer is there analyzing you, and you really put yourself on the spot. And it's I see it now with myself. If somebody films me surfing, I learn so much. But the days that I'm out there, I can learn a little bit every day. But if I see myself surfing, I can pick off 10 things right away. And it's not the same because I'm not out there getting a clip, but the magic of working for that. And I think very few people that haven't been out there fighting for their clip understand how much we put into those fucking clips.
But the core snowboard community, the vast majority of people listening to this, even if they're at like an office desk right now, or they're driving to work and they've only been boarding once this year, you know, Lord, maybe they didn't even get out this year or last year. Most of us have hiked a hip a couple times and wanted to get that frontside air good. Most of us have built that rail onto that down bar and tried to get a board slide on the kink, whether it was 20 years ago, but most of the community that I think that engages in this podcast has, you know, hiked the jump a couple times, filmed it with their friends, and tried to achieve a good cab 5 or Indy or whatever. And it's a great feeling when you nail it. And it's the best filming with your homies. Like, it's one of the best feelings ever. If you have a relationship with your filmer too, like you guys are friends, like he wants you to get the shot and you want to get the shot and you get that, like that vibe in itself is addicting.
Yeah, I know. And that's like we were talking about earlier. My favorite times was filming with all those boys up in Terrace, because exactly that was happening. It was a silent contest because everybody loves the contest, but it was a contest without any first, second, or third place. It was a daily struggle to be the guy that nailed it. One day it was me, another day, most of the time it was Mark, you know, like he would be that guy a lot. And it's just such a good feeling when you are that guy. And it's not, the cool thing about it is like winning without any sort of self-celebration. The celebration of being the guy is enough, because everybody has been out there working so hard. And it's so random who really, like you can start, like I remember that. You can start your day off real bad and think that you get no shots and have no feeling whatsoever, end up getting some of the best shots of the season. That's what's so random about it. And yeah, the camaraderie and the feeding of each other and that silent contest is what I miss the most about going filming.
I like that. Maybe on that note, we'll shift gears here to 10 questions I ask every guest. I kind of switch these around depending on the guest, if it's photographer, filmer, etc. So these are just kind of bullet points, just a quick kind of one-word answer vibe. You can elaborate on them if you see fit. But the first one is best style back in the day and best style currently.
Can we go 3 eras?
Oh yeah, 100%. Glad you said that.
Okay, era number 1, Craig. Era number 2, Terje. And era number 3, Nico.
Oh, Nicholas Mueller?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't really touch on him at all, but fuck, is he ever sick? You got to film with him quite a bit over the years, I imagine. That must have been fun.
If it's one rider that will show you how good he is when you're riding with him, it's Nico. Like all the shit that he does looks so fucking easy. I've tried to run in on his little fucking pat down jumps. 9 out of 10 times I won't even make it to takeoff. And he will just fucking, you know, like you're like, what the fuck? But yeah, for me, that with style and control and board skill, mountain skill, those 3 guys are the most stylish riders of all time.
I love that. And what about currently? You got a rider you're hyped on right now?
Yeah. I mean, I might be a little biased, but I've mentioned his name a couple of times, and Banksy is definitely one of the guys right now that is just really showing mad style. But I gotta give it to Mark, man, because we gotta talk a little bit about. I mean, I can mention lots of riders that I just think have incredible style. John J, E-Jack, Travis, but Mark just shows that he's got that fucking explosive new age spin craziness, but he has that cool element of smooth methods and pokey grabs, and he really brings that so flawlessly into the backcountry, which I know how difficult it is for him, because he doesn't have years on his back still in the backcountry, and he spends a lot of time on his contests, so he doesn't get to train as much as other people do. So yeah, today Mark for sure, and then those 3 guys in the past.
Good picks. All right, most underrated rider.
It's a difficult one, but I'll take one that's close to heart, and it's finally a reason why, because we're going to see this here how underrated he has been. John J. Yes. Should have been on the fucking natural selection tour a long time ago, and his brother. There's both of them. They're underrated. Like for some reason they're, yeah, you can get the list is long with people that should have been also part of that list. But John Jay.
The one thing that John Jay has is he has years of experience that have not dissipated. And if he needs to do a back three off of a janky, weird in run into a small pocket, there's probably 4 other riders in the world that could ride the as technically as John. I think that if he throws a snowball and he's doing one of his stock tricks, he's one of the few guys that can probably figure out just by looking at the Barbie angle, from the bottom up, and figure out how to land on that fucking snowball or by that tree. Like he is, I watch John Jay thoroughly because he's one of my favorite snowboarders of all time, and he posted a back three mute or Indy the other day off this little gap, and just the pop and the way that he did it, I was like, damn, that is a professional snowboarder right there. That is a
he's
pro.
So good. He's really good, and I feel
and
like
Ejac, I'll throw that in there too. I've ridden with Ejac a lot live, and he is very impressive and so skilled and better live than he is in his videos.
Oh yeah, way better. Like, but I feel like during the time that I've known John, he's never really gotten lifted up to how good he is. He's like by far, like hands down, one of the 5 best riders of my era. And he was never really like, I think it was coincidence, but he should have been that it should have been a brand behind him that told that story more, I think, in his time. And now, like, why, like for me, he would have been a natural guy at the first natural selection. He should have been at that first contest. Why he hasn't been invited before this year, I do not know. But, and the same goes with Ejac and Jake Blauvelt for that matter. These are just names that I would like to see out there, but it's hard to go with who is the most underrated, though, because everybody is underrated roughly about a little bit here and there, but yeah, it lands with John Jay.
Okay, I'll throw in one other name and then we'll move on. Another rider that should be at natural selection, Kazu.
Yeah, sorry. Dude, I remember it was so troublesome to film with Kazu in the beginning because he was just like this, like very low-spoken kid that wasn't on top of the communication. But he was just so explosively good at fucking writing, and he would always ask us for tips. So, Mats, what do you think? I go down there, and you're like, I would never fucking go down there. It's the first thing I think. But then you're trying to like, and we learned all of us so fast in the first couple of times he coming out to the fucking backcountry that just let him tell you and just say yes, because then magic is gonna fucking start happening. Homie is like a fucking ping pong ball, dude, down the mountain. He doesn't fucking fall. That's why one year we named this whole pillow section we found, and it was the biggest pillow stack that we've all have seen ever. Like, and we named it Ninja Fight. You know why? Because out of 2 weeks of filming with 10 days of Bluebird, that's the only time Kazu fell the whole time. Never fell. Landed everything. What goddamn fucking every line. It might have not been the smoothest thing. He might have flamed out, but he fucking landed and rode out every fucking time, dude. And that, yeah, he should be a natural selection.
That was amazing. All right, what's the best event you've attended in snowboarding?
Arctic Challenge.
Yeah, that's an easy pick. That must have been special.
Yeah, it was sick. And the 1 year we were at Hemsedal when Terry was feeding everybody whale and didn't say anything. He's so funny, dude. Everybody, I hope you like your burgers. Everybody's like, yeah, they're delicious. Yeah, it's big fish. And then he just went off the fucking stool again. Everybody, like so many people spitting out their burger. But yeah, memorable event because of the time and being able to, you know, that was like the first time I stepped into the professional scene and got to just be I got to ride the pipe. I wasn't part of the event, but I got to ride the pipe.
That must have been fucking crazy back then with that much talent and style at that point too. Like those guys looked. Yeah, that's a good group of people. All right,
Yeah,
what's
it was
the
crazy.
worst trend to hit snowboarding?
I guess the happenings of the last week kind of speak for himself. TikTok.
That was a good TikTok. That was perfect. I'll give you a 10 out of 10 on that answer. Favorite grab?
Method.
Do you grab?
Not backside air. Method.
Okay.
Doesn't
Do you
matter
like?
if you grab it. Doesn't matter if you go skate style between your legs or outside, as long as your tail is above your nose. Then
Wow.
it's a method.
I love that. Actually, that was clean, easy, to the point. Great way to explain how to do a method. What's your current stance right now? I'm just curious. How tall are you, and what's your stance? This is a question for myself, maybe.
I'm a 6'2", so 182 centis, and I run plus 17 in the front and minus 6 in the back.
Do you know how wide do you measure the width?
Is it 52 centimeters I have now from center to center?
Awesome. Okay, what's your favorite snowboard company that is no longer around?
It's a good question. Are they all still around?
Airwalk.
Nah, but that's not my favorite. I would guess Sims. Sims used to be fucking damn cool, dude. With Noah's Ark, that board used to be one of my favorite boards. My absolute wish list board when I was a kid.
Yeah, the Noah's Ark board was amazing.
5150. Sorry, 5150.
Oh, that was good. Who when I think of 5150, I think of Andy Forgash.
Yeah. And Atlantis boards too.
Oh
with
yeah.
Daniel Frank.
Yeah. Ingmar rode for them, didn't he? Cale Stevens.
Yeah.
I forget a couple others. All right, the last question. Who is the GOAT? You got to pick one. Terrier.
Yeah.
Boom. What makes him the GOAT in your eyes? Why over Mark, Sean, Travis, Craig Kelly?
He paved the path. He got the stick from Craig. Craig gave him the go ahead to go make it commercial, and he did. Nobody can do that after him.
Well, Mads, thank you for coming on the podcast. I've been a big fan for a long time. I'm a bigger fan now after doing this episode and after watching all your video parts in a row. I even bought 2 of them or rented online just to make sure I watched all of the parts. Radness. And I mean, from the methods to the air to fakies on the hip. Yeah, I mean, tasteful trick selection, a lot of switch landings in the POW. Like we said, I think you had a lot more gas in the tank, and I think that you got the short end of the stick in an era where riders had a quicker expiry date. Now I feel like a lot of my friends now, I look at like Chris Rasman's 35, Matt Belzil's 40, like, yeah. And they definitely, by no means do I think a lot of my friends or close friends make like money, you know what I mean? But it's enough to snowboard for the season. It's not like nobody's getting 6 figures or some sort of crazy contract these days. I mean, which is too bad. Maybe the CEOs could give a little bit more money to the homies.
I think there could be, in the culture, like we talked about, the culture is on the rise. It's going to grab itself again. But I forgot to mention that I do still have a pro model
with
Gentum sticks.
Boom.
Yeah.
Sick.
And that story is briefly worth mentioning because it's such a, let's just call it, for all the time that I've spent making snowboards with JG at Burton and all the amount of brain power I have put into testing boards and trying different carbon fiber, this and fucking this and that. and had a real good time because JG had been a really fun dude to ride with, and so into, and Chris Doyle and all the guys there, fucking awesome. And I got this chance, and it's complete honor. We never had a contract. It's never been anything, but it just came up in a conversation after I was riding for Burton when I was in Niseko. And then I was riding these Genten boards and just freaking out how good they were to ride. And I fucking kid you not, dude. They are some of the best boards in the world to ride. Like, they're the funnest boards. Ask Ingmar and Johan and all the guys up in Svansten up in northern Sweden, because I hooked up my friend here with the import, and we've been like having it's a tight Scandinavian crew now with the Gentem, and yeah, it's worth trying just for a leisure day. If you ever want to elevate your resort riding from just being carving around to being an amazing surf experience, that's Gentem for you. And it's the perfect board for a retired snowboarder like me, you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, that it looks like a fucking Santa Claus hat, and the nose is was it fucking 36 centimeters wide in the nose, in the tip of the board. Effective edge is 108. The whole board is 164. So it means there's about freaking 50 centimeters of dead nose, you know? But that little board hits hips like no tomorrow. In 2014, I beat Terje on the Gentem Fly Fisk on the hip in Hemsedal, and I got picture proof to fucking prove it.
Is that was that the Method Mag movie where you guys all got together?
That was after, but 2 years before that, I was still pretty, because then I was just coming off of snowboarding, and I was already having that fly fisk, and I came up because Ståle had the Oakley photo shoot in Hemsedal, and they built the hip. And I remember just coming in there, and even Ståle was just like, dude, you got fucking mad pop, old man. And I remember feeling like, I felt pretty cool, because the young kid that wasn't so young, he called me old. But the coolest thing about that day was that Terje was riding a snowboard, and then I was starting to go bigger than him on the hip, and then he started riding snow skate.
Oh my God. It's amazing.
Yeah, but back to the boards, it's been really, really fucking awesome to work with Taro and the Gentem crew. And whoever hasn't been to Niseko and seen the snowboard stoke that lives with these guys, it's absolutely enormous. And it's been such a, I feel really honored to be able to like feed that part of my ego, to have a pro model, to be able to, now we're not developing anymore, but it's still an active board, and I get a board here and there, and I just have so much fun shredding on these boards. They're just made for cruising, really.
Well, if anybody should have a pro model after they've retired, it's you. So, I mean, well deserved. Well deserved, my man.
And with the coolest thing is that it's a powder board from Niseko. That's what I like about it. Have you been to Niseko?
Yes, I have. It's Japan.
How good is it?
I mean, Japan is the go, man. It's one of my favorite places ever. I mean, I like the culture, I like the food, I like the people, I like the powder. I hate when it gets sunny because it always gets hot, but
but still really fun resort riding, though. Like the best resort riding ever. And how about the tall giraffes at the bar, at the pub there?
What's the tall giraffes?
The giraffe beer, when you get the tall giraffe with beer at the pub there, like a couple of liters of beer, and you have your own tap at the table. It's over.
I've never done that before.
Okay, so go to Hanasono restaurant next time you go there, and then they have the big giraffes there, and you get French fries and burgers, and fucking awesome.
I'll put that on my bucket list. And yeah, anyways, thanks again for coming on, my man. And
thank you for having.
Yeah, just thanks for putting in a shift on your career. It's just wild to think of, what you've done, and then how that shaped snowboarding and all of us little kids, our lives. Because I definitely wanted to step up my my hip game after all those video parts. I mean, that air to fakie that you have, or back 180 or back 270, however you want to articulate that, notice to appear, that one sticks out to me. So huge fan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's one of the greatest pleasures of the aftermath is to be able to sit here now and you telling me stories that you appreciated my writing so that you're writing now. That's fucking awesome.
I mean, yeah, I'm assuming that there's thousands of kids around the world that are my age, or hundreds of thousands. Like, the ripple effect is profound, you know what I mean? No doubt.
But it's hard to remind you about, it's very hard to remind oneself about that when you're stepping out, like especially the way I did. I totally stepped out. I moved out to the buttfuck of Norway, or Norway, and became a sheep farmer. So it's like now 10 years after all the fame and fortune, it means a lot to hear that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I do mean that. So on that note, cheers and take care.
Cheers, brother. Good
Peace.
talking. Peace out.